Yo, what's up? Welcome to PS I Love You XOXO episode 99. I'm one of your hosts, Blessing Adeoye Jr. Joining me is Gameonesis, aka Janet Garcia.
Yo, what's good?
Not much, Janet. I love your set right now. I love the background. I love the Christmassy setup, and I love the lights that you're wearing on your head right now.
Thanks. Yeah, I love decorating for the holidays in general. You know, some would call me the Lord of Holidays. Some of those people may even be here on this call. What's up, Barrett? Yes, the people who matter, honestly. But yeah, you know, it's a fun time to get into the holiday spirit. So
you know what?
yeah,
I'm willing to give it up. Janet is the Queen of Holidays or King of Holidays. What was it? The Lord of Holidays.
It's kind of like the Lord of Doors. Spoilers for maybe the bird game if you haven't played that yet. But yeah, there we go.
Hell yeah. I appreciate the PlayStation Christmas sweater too. That's one that I've been wanting to get forever that I've not been able to get my hands on.
Specifically for y'all, because I absolutely will overheat while wearing this. Like as soon as I put it on, I'm like, this is going to be a really warm 2 hours, but
dude, I feel that. Today I'm in a t-shirt because I think I've been rocking layers a lot recently, and I find that halfway through shows I'm like, okay, get this thing off me. I can't do this anymore. Get this jacket off.
Like after once it's like, all right, bye, have a good day, everybody, and we cut records, it's just like peeling off layers,
God.
Rushing for water. Like it's very dramatic ending these episodes.
It is. But Janet, speaking of the end of the year, Funderstruck wrote into patreon.com/kindoffunnygames just like you can and asks, what's up and happy holidays, Bless and Janet. The Game Awards are just a few days away and I'm pretty hyped. My question is, with the strong closing moments of the last PlayStation showcase, what level of announcement are you expecting from PlayStation? Do we see something major, like a faction teaser, a remastered Infamous collection, or do we see a smaller announcement presence and more release dates on third-party games like Final Fantasy? Keep up the amazing work, and thank you both for another great year of PS I Love You XOXO content. Janet, what kind of presence do you think PlayStation is going to have at the Game Awards?
I can feel the take not aging well. So I hate these moments.
Oh yeah, you only got a couple of days for this one too. Like people are going to listen to this on Friday and know that we're completely wrong about what we're talking about.
Yeah. So you know, it's very awkward to be in that position, but I always err on the side of having sort of low expectations with this kind of thing. I do think, you know, the Game Awards has been heavily talked about as having X number of games, and some of those are going to be things you've never seen before. And Keely's been teasing a bunch of stuff throughout the weeks. We talked about that Returnal, you know, teaser, maybe not teaser thing, like an episode or two ago. But I feel like it'll be something on the smaller end, something like, you know, we have the Returnal potential DLC rumor kind of floating around, something that will be exciting for sure, but not groundbreaking. I do think a Factions teaser, I just don't really have a lot of confidence on where that timeline is at right now. Factions is one of those things where it's I can see this any day, or I can see this years from now. And I when it comes to those scenarios, I always lean on the latter, just because I think that's the safer and more likely option. So I think we'll get a little something that's oh, this is a cool thing, but I don't think we'll have anything that blows us out of the water. And we already had a lot of those one-off trailers to sort of wow us for big stuff coming up from the PlayStation side of things. So yeah, I imagine it'd be a little bit on the smaller end.
Yeah, it's tough to think about what PlayStation would have coming right off of the PlayStation Showcase a couple months ago that they would turn around and show at a Game Awards. You know, I feel like anything that they wanted to reveal this fall, they would have already done. Now, when I'm looking at the reveals for last Game Awards last year, there's not anything that's hugely PlayStation. You know, there's the third-party stuff, like Funderstruck in the question mentions, right? Of course, you're going to see a lot of third-party stuff there. But when I look at a lot of the announcements, a lot of them are actually Xbox heavy. We're Xbox heavy last year. And you know, Last of Us, I think, would be cool. It'll be a good get. And it would line up with the original Last of Us years and years ago being revealed at the Game Awards, right? The Game Awards is, I think, a sizable enough venue for them to do something like that at. But I think the question is more so, is it the time? And for the Last of Us Factions, as much as I want it to be the time, I don't think it's the time for The Last of Us Factions. That said, Final Fantasy 16, that's another one that I'm not going to hold out hope for, but Jeff did have the quote earlier that there's going to be multiple reveals that are of the size of an Elden Ring gameplay reveal at Summer Games Fest. And with that, I get excited. Are any of those going to be PlayStation is the question. And I don't think PlayStation is going to have anything of that size. What I do hope for is that Returnal DLC. I think that'll be a home run. That'll be something I'd get very excited for. And then one or two things here. I still am curious on how PlayStation is going to reveal the partnered games that they have for PlayStation Studios. You know, things like what's coming out of Deviation Studios, what's coming out of Jade Raymond Studios. How are they going to talk about those and reveal those? I'm very excited to see, because those I could see being PlayStation Showcase or Rain a blog post or anywhere in between. So I think there's a possibility of something like that showing up. Could something Kojima show up? Like, there's a lot of those questions. I'm not going to hope for something Kojima because it's not been teased or rumored, and I feel like that's something that would be either teased or rumored by now. But yeah, like I don't really have any big predictions other than the Returnal DLC, which I would be very excited for. I'd be all about that.
I can't wait for the ways that we're going to be wrong on this, because somehow I feel like we haven't had any clean wins in these predictions.
Dude, I feel like we have.
If either Blessing or Janet are wrong on these predictions, tweet at GameOverGreggy. Just
tweet
why
at
are you wrong?
Greggy.
Why are you wrong?
And also, what are we going to be wrong about? Like, all we predicted so far is like Returnal DLC, which, like, if we're wrong about that, then that's an easy, like, cool, like, it didn't happen. But if we get it right, we get it right. And also, as far as our track record, like, never forget, I predicted Little Devil Inside being the big thing at the PlayStation State of Play.
That one was really good. I also want to shout out what Spider-Man 2. No one believed. Everyone thought I was being ridiculous, but it was there. And I was like, and then even I didn't believe at one point, because when I saw Wolverine, I was like, well, obviously they're not going to have also Spider-Man. And then they did, and I was like, I never doubted myself for a second. You know, just revisionist history real quick.
What would be the wildest thing that could happen at the Game Awards from PlayStation?
Factions is out now.
Okay, yes,
that is another
different
Insomniac game.
See, I was going to bring that up. I was going to bring up, does Insomniac show up, period? Because, like, you know, we got Wolverine and Spider-Man 2. It's December seems to be the month of Spider-Man, between the Across the Spider-Verse trailer, No Way Home coming out, and like the Spider-Man skins, which we'll talk about later in the show. Could we get more Spider-Man from Insomniac? Is it too early? The answer is yes. Could it still happen? The answer is maybe. You know, like I would love something else from Insomniac just to show up, just for them to go, yeah, we're here. Like, you know, we're nonstop. You're gonna get sick of us. We're going to show up everywhere.
I think on the Spider-Man front, I could see something, but I don't know if that'd be Spider-Man proper, or like just like a Marvel's Avengers nod. Because one thing the Game Awards does a lot too is showing us quick, you know, whether they're trailers or ads for games that like we already have known about for forever, you know, like just a random Genshin Impact ad and things like that.
Yeah.
Thrown in there. So I could see, like, I feel like there's been a lot of Spider-Man content of varying scales sort of doled out in the last couple weeks, which I'm sure we'll get to a little bit later in the show. So I would be a little surprised if we don't see any Spider-Man at all. But that being said, I don't think it's going to be anything that we need to write home about. It's more like, oh, like maybe a small tweet or something like that.
I could also see Horizon gameplay. I think now is getting around the time where you'd want to be a bit more open and start to really saturate like the actual gameplay footage. Like, we got the blog, which we'll talk about again later, but PlayStation, in terms of the big showcases of Horizon, I think they've been playing it a little bit close to their chest. We got the state of play earlier in the year, we got the reveal of it last year, but they've not been like throwing Horizon in front of our faces, right? They've been doing that slow build of here's some blog posts. All right, here's a state of play. Okay, here's more blog posts. I think showing up at an event like Game Awards 2 months before the game's about to come out, it would be a good move. I think it would be a good it would flow well into the release of Horizon, and probably another state of play coming out maybe right before the game comes out. I think that
I agree. We haven't really seen it paraded around very much, and maybe it's because it's such a big IP, they don't feel as well, you know, it's only the second entry, but like maybe they don't feel the need to push it as hard as, like, you know, the infamous Deathloop advertising, where like Deathloop lived like with us for a long time.
Yep.
I'd like to see it. I mean, I think ideally too, any form of a new trailer would be nice. Just like if we could see some stuff we haven't already. That being said, I don't necessarily need that. I feel like what they showed was a pretty solid look at kind of what you're doing. But, new is always better. Like getting more stuff would be appealing, and it would, I think, make it a little bit more notable for people to like actually pay attention to it, rather than if you just cut down what we've already seen, it's a little bit less exciting.
Yeah, I definitely feel that. Janet, before we get into the show proper, I got some pieces of PS I Love You housekeeping. Now, like I said before, it is episode 99 of PS I Love You, which means that next week is episode 100, which is really exciting. Round of applause, everybody. We did it. We made it to 100.
I'm not giving any applause yet because we haven't gotten there yet. Okay, it's too early.
What can happen between this week and next week?
You never know. I think the Game Awards could be fucking wild. Okay.
Oh my god. Oh no. But to celebrate episode 100, we're doing the PS I Love You XOXO 2021 awards, and that is featuring the return of the one and only Greg Miller. We're going to give out a bunch of ridiculous PlayStation awards. It's going to be a good time. We did the same thing last year, and I believe that people loved it. I don't know. I don't read the comments. I assume people loved it. I loved it, at the very least. And so with that, you should write into Patreon with your submissions for categories, along with your picks for winners. I'll drop actual categories, like the main categories we'll do on my Twitter, so you can follow me at Blessing Jr., and I'll make sure to drop a form there that you guys can write into to vote on the winners over there. That's one. Two, also to celebrate episode 100, we're doing a huge game giveaway next week featuring the hottest PlayStation games of 2021 collection. To enter, you can tweet your favorite PS I Love You XOXO moment from 2021 with the hashtag PS I Love You XOXO, and we'll pick 2 responses to receive a care package directly from PlayStation. That's right, the contents of this giveaway have been provided by PlayStation. In that care package, you will receive PS Plus for 3 months, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart for PS5, Returnal for PS5, Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut for PS4 and PS5 bundled, Death Stranding Director's Cut for PS5, and MLB The Show 21 for PS4 and PS5 bundled. Please note these are redeemable by residents in the US, Canada, and certain regions of Latin America. PlayStation Plus codes need to be redeemed by March 31st, 2022, and will all renew after 3 months unless manually canceled. Again, to enter in that giveaway, tweet out your favorite PS I Love You XOXO moment of 2021 with the hashtag PS I Love You XOXO. You don't need to tag any of us. I'll just go through the hashtag and we'll pick the winners from there, which is very exciting stuff. You're getting all the biggest games from PlayStation of the last year, which is huge. And so 2 lucky listeners will get access to that. And then one more thing for the PS I Love You XOXO specific housekeeping. Horizon Zero Dawn, our hashtag PS We Played This is due in January, and I can confirm that I've started the Frozen Wilds.
I did notice that. Yeah,
Yep.
I was like, when you rated me the other day, I was like, oh, it was Blessing playing. It was Horizon. I was like, okay. How's it going?
I didn't get far because I was having some technical difficulties. I don't know what it is about streaming Horizon. I think that game just looks so good that it causes my stream to chug because my stream was not looking smooth running Horizon, but it did feel nice to be back. It felt good to be back. I forgot how, it's not even that I forgot. Jumping into the game for the first time on PS5, I think really enhanced how good that game looked, because when I played Horizon, it was on my base PS4, right? I didn't play it on a PS4 Pro. I played it on the original PS4, and it looked great, right? It's a Horizon Zero Dawn. But playing it on my PS5 with like all of the like technical upgrades that it comes with the PS5 and like the updates and stuff, it looks really good. It looks really smooth, and I'm actually really excited to play a lot more because when I don't want to spoil, it's not a spoiler, whatever. When you jump into the DLC area, of course, it's like a different type of region, right? It's snow everywhere, and there is some like beautiful like views in the distance, is what I'll say. Like there's a volcano basically that looks hot in the background, and I absolutely love it. I cannot wait to dive deep. I think that is going to be my Christmas break game, and so I very much am excited about jumping into it deeper.
Yeah, I'm curious as to what your take's going to be from it, because the one thing that everyone keeps telling me, and y'all could debate it in the comments on how true this is or not, is how hard the DLC is compared to the base game. So I'm interested to see, what picking that up is like, and how, what things from that you want to see integrated into like the next iteration, or just how you want them to kind of handle that thing, because everyone does. That seems to be the common thread that I've heard from people in my chat. But again, I'm still in the base game, so I can't really comment on Frozen Wilds.
I don't know if it's hard so far. I think what I'm experiencing is that it's tough jumping in after not playing for so long, because I beat Horizon. I first played Horizon in 2017 when it came out. I went back to it and finished it in beginning of 2020. And so now it's been about 2 years since I've beaten and put down Horizon Zero Dawn, and jumping back into it, it is there's definitely a learning curve in terms of reminding yourself how this game plays. One of the first things I noticed or realized when I was jumping back in, I was like, oh yeah, this is an RPG as hell. Like in my mind, it was a Ghost of Tsushima adjacent action game where you are like using arrows and all this shit. And I thought it was gonna be more actiony and more like gameplay, action gameplay focused. Getting my hands on the controller again, I was reminded how much it is like, oh yeah, I'm picking up materials, I'm picking up resources, I'm crafting, I'm buying resources, I'm like, figuring out what my favorite weapons are. Like there's a lot of action, and like there's dialogue trees. I forgot about like the being able to have dialogue choices and all that stuff, and how much like, dialogue there is in the game talking to other characters and shit. I forgot all about that. And so it's been actually pretty cool to go back and go, oh yeah, like this is my type of game. This is my type of RPG. But yeah, I'm excited to play more. I'm actually very much looking forward to it. And I can't wait to have a conversation about Horizon Zero Dawn. But for now, let me remind everybody out there that this is PS I Love You XOXO, your PlayStation podcast. Each and every week, we join you to talk about the biggest topics in PlayStation. If you like that, you can watch it live right here as we record on patreon.com/kindoffunnygames, or you can watch it on Tuesday when it posts for everyone on youtube.com/kindoffunnygames, roosterteeth.com, or on podcast services around the globe. Remember, you can use Epic Creator Code Kind of Funny on all Epic Store and Epic in-game purchases like Rocket League and Fortnite to help support the channel. Housekeeping for you. We're watching along with the Game Awards this week. That is happening this Thursday evening over on twitch.tv/kindoffunnygames. I sadly won't be there because I will be at the Game Awards down in LA. And so like, I'm very excited. I got an outfit planned. I plan to party. I plan to hang out. I plan to like see Jeff Keighley do his thing live. I can't wait. Giancarlo Esposito, I heard, is going to be there. Very excited about that. But you can, of course, tune in to Tim, Andy. I believe Mike is going to be there. Bear's probably going to be there running the ones and twos. It's going to be a good time. So make sure you tune into that live as we live watch the Game Awards. Thank you to our Patreon producers, Pranksy, Tyler Ross, Delaney Twinning, Julian the Gluten-Free Gamer, Alex J. Sandoval, James Hastings, Casey Andrew, and Greg Miller returns to content next week. Nick should quit now. Today we're brought to you by Honey, ExpressVPN, and Audible, but we'll tell you about that later. For now, let's start with topic of the show. Janet, last week, it was reported by the one and only Jason Schreier over at Bloomberg that PlayStation plans to launch a new service to take on Xbox Game Pass. This is huge news, and I want to talk all about it for our topic of the show. I want to dive into the article. I'm going to read through the article, and we got a lot of write-ins, a lot of questions. We're going to talk all about it. Janet, are you ready?
Yes. Also, I just want to shout us out because the PS Now review, and you, because you're the one that bumped it up. Mm-hmm. The PS Now review we did was the most perfectly timed piece of content in the history of content.
I 100% agree. It's funny because like I tweeted this. I feel like this episode is probably going to feel like a part 2 to the previous episode because we got to talk about PS Now, right, and dive into backwards compatibility, what streaming is like, and we got to get the hands-on and experience with PlayStation Now. At least I did. I know like Jane, I think you were already rocking with it, and Barry's been rocking with it forever. But we all here now have a base knowledge of PlayStation Now that we can take into to talking about the details of what seems to be the combination of PlayStation Now and PS Plus with some more additives in there. And so, yeah, like go back and listen to our last episode if you haven't. Of course, you don't need to if you're just here for the Spartacus business. But it is a good, I think, part 1 to this part 2 of that story. And so let's jump in to Jason Schreier's story over at Bloomberg. PlayStation is planning a new subscription service to compete with rival Microsoft's popular Xbox Game Pass, according to people familiar with Sony's plans and documents reviewed by Bloomberg. The service, codenamed Spartacus, will allow PlayStation owners to pay a monthly fee for access to a catalog of modern and classic games, said the people who asked not to be identified because they weren't authorized to speak to the press about the plans. The offering will likely be available on the smash hit PS4, which has sold more than 116 million units, and its elusive successor, the PS5, which launched more than a year ago, but is still difficult to buy due to supply chain issues. When it launches, expected in the spring, the service will merge Sony's 2 existing subscription plans, PlayStation Plus and PlayStation Now. Currently, PlayStation Plus is required for most online multiplayer games and offers free monthly titles, while PlayStation Now allows users to stream or download older games. Documents reviewed by Bloomberg suggest that Sony plans to retain the PlayStation Plus branding, but phase out PlayStation Now. Details on Spartacus may still not be finalized, but documentation reviewed by Bloomberg outlines a service with 3 tiers. The first would include existing PlayStation Plus benefits. The second would offer a large catalog of PS4 and eventually PS5 games. The third tier would add extended demos, game streaming, and a library of classic PS1, PS2, PS3, and PSP games. A representative for PlayStation didn't immediately respond to a request for comment. Although the PlayStation has outsold the Xbox in recent years, Sony has lagged behind Microsoft on the subscription front. With this new structure, Sony will look to compete with an Xbox feature that has been popular and lucrative. Sony is also putting resources into expanding its efforts into cloud gaming, the people familiar with the plans said. Microsoft's xCloud game streaming service became widely available earlier this year. Janet, is this Sony's answer to Xbox Game Pass?
Yes, it is partially an incomplete answer in the sense that it's not exactly a one-to-one in terms of the infamous day and date that I think is such a big seller for Game Pass. But I feel like clearly this is their attempt to create a new and appealing subscription model that, also kind of rolls in their existing ones, PS Plus and PS Now being those with this sort of like extra middle ground. Like the second tier sounds most like Game Pass in terms of stuff that's going on right now. So it's kind of in a sense like pulling apart pieces of PS Now, but then like also beefing it up is sort of the sound of this pitch. So yeah, I think this is their answer for that. And I think, it's funny because in so much of our PS Now review, we had those conversations on, is this sort of what they have in lieu of Game Pass? Is it fair to compare it to Game Pass? And we sort of debated like the fairness of it. But I think ultimately we both kind of agreed that until they come out with something else, which is this, they don't have anything else for us to use. It's kind of the comparison by default, regardless of the different ideologies that might make up the services. And I think with this, it's clear that there's at least a leaning on, okay, well, how can we take some of what Xbox is doing with Game Pass and incorporating it? Honestly, a lot of it, except for the day and date stuff, with also, I guess, pushing a little bit more on like leaning on the classic stuff and then wanting to integrate. Even again, the cloud stuff is still very much something that Microsoft is sort of spearheading a bit. Not that they haven't had cloud or remote play or things like that already integrated. But yeah, I think this is their response in trying to create a sort of version of this for themselves. It'll be really interesting too to see what the naming of this ends up being officially when it comes out, because I think that will somewhat speak to how they view this in the grand scheme of their business strategy.
It seems like the naming might just be PS Plus. I think they might just call it PS Plus and have it be the transition toward the tier system, where if you already have PS Plus, you're just automatically tier 1, because it looks like tier 1 is going to be base PS Plus. But if you want to upgrade into tier 2 and tier 3, that's where things get a little bit more interesting. They just phase out the PS Now. Yeah, you do PS Plus Plus or PS Plus Plus Plus, where that is the tier 3.
PlayStation Plus.
Yeah. And I would assume that would be the case because PS Plus is a powerful brand name, and it is a thing that people are, one, familiar with, and two, people like, right? PS Plus works. PS Plus is a thing that most of the audience has, partly because people feel like they have to have it to play online, but also you do get the benefits. You do get the PS Plus games. And, with PS Now being what it is, it makes sense to basically just get rid of that as a whole, right? For everything we kind of talked about last week in terms of how, like, it feels like a Criterion collection and like a weird, an interestingly niche thing, as opposed to hey, this is our core thing that you must have. PS Now feels very side to what PS Plus and the core PlayStation experience is. I think this is taking that and trying to put it into more of the bag of being core to what the PlayStation experience and the PlayStation ecosystem is, which I think is smart. And I think it is something that PlayStation has been trying to build toward for a while. At the beginning of the PS5 era, right, we got the PlayStation Plus collection, which was an access to a bunch of PlayStation 4 games that you missed, or maybe like you're jumping into the PS5 without having a PS4. Cool, now you have this back catalog of games that you can play with a good deal, right? That's them taking the step toward providing good value in their services. I think when comparing this to Xbox Game Pass, you're right in terms of it not being one for one and a perfect solution, right? It's kind of an imperfect solution in terms of what it is stacked up to Game Pass. I think it is the meeting in the middle when it comes to what we talk about when it comes to PlayStation, in terms of what the vision of PlayStation is versus what versus what the vision of Xbox and Xbox Game Pass is. When it comes to Xbox and Xbox Game Pass is the vision for Microsoft, right? They want to get everybody into that. That is the core of their ecosystem. Whereas for PlayStation, I think it is still the box. It is still selling the games. I have no faith that the first party PlayStation games are going to land day and date on this service. And I also don't think they need to. I think there's a lot of wiggle room in terms of what this can end up being that speaks to the strengths of PlayStation. And I think where Xbox Game Pass feels like Xbox transitioning from being about the box to being about the platform, this new form of PS Plus, right? Project Spartacus feels like them competing less so from an ecosystem standpoint and more so from a value standpoint. I think that is one of the best things that Game Pass has brought to the space is you can get a lot of games on Game Pass for a very low price, and it is actually a very impressive catalog of games, and it's redefining how we view value in terms of games, especially during a generation where games are transitioning into $70. I think right now you're seeing a lot of people hurt for, oh man, the PS5 is expensive. Oh man, the games are expensive. How do I like? How does PlayStation compete when you look at Xbox and it's like, damn, you can get all these games for via Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, right? You can get Halo, you can get Forza, you can get all these things just that subscription price. I think the way you do that is by looking at value and going, okay, cool. How do we merge PS Now and PS Plus and compete on a value stance as opposed to just like trying to find a way to get all our first party games on PS Plus? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so for sure. We could obviously talk about this for a lot, and we're going to. I don't want to get ahead of questions because I'm sure a lot of the questions would target stuff I would ask you anyway. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, speaking of questions, right? Let's pull in some questions. Of course, a lot of you wrote into patreon.com/kindoffunnygames, which I appreciate, both with questions and with thoughts. I'm going to start off with Sean Childers, who writes in and says, with the potential Game Pass like for PSN, if we were to get PS3 titles, do you think they'd be downloadable rather than streaming? Aside from the licensed titles that aren't allowed to come up, I keep my PS3 around because I don't like the streaming portion of PS Now. But as my PS3 is dying, I'm running out of options. Help me believe, Blessy Jan Kenobi. I like that.
Yeah, me too. I haven't heard that one before.
It's very creative.
Too, but I don't know that I have much to base that faith on other than the fact that it would be highly appealing if they did allow for that. But I think the fact that, and again, this is technically still, leaked information, so we don't know what the messaging is going to be when it officially comes out or if things might change. But the description of the third tier having extended demos, game streaming, and a classic library of these games does make it sound like game streaming is definitely going to be a part of it. And I mean, they could do the thing where, like, if, again, looking at the Xbox side of things, they sort of did it in the reverse where they're like, oh, by the way, you can like stream them and you can decide I want to stream it just to save the space, or I want to stream it as a way to sort of do a quick test run of a game before committing to downloading it onto my console. So certainly there is a way to incorporate game streaming that doesn't make it mandatory, but I'd be really impressed, and I think that'd be the best thing to do, but I don't know if that is, one, super feasible, and two, something that's going to be of like high priority, especially because that third tier, by putting the classic games at the third tier, it sort of makes me feel like that is for like the hardcores of hardcore. And that's not to imply that like you need to spend a lot of money or have a certain service to like show your dedication to a platform, because I think that's like a problematic viewpoint. But by that, I mean, those are for the people who want absolutely everything. It's obvious it's, going to be the most expensive model because it's a 3-tier model. To me, that second tier of having, the PS4 and PS5 games with the existing PS Plus stuff that we already know, that's like the medium soda, or the like of these sort of situations, like the one that people will get because you don't want to pay for the large and the large is kind of too much, but like the small, I mean, I could just pay a little bit more and get the medium. So I feel like that, to me, the structuring of this order, to me, speaks to the appeal point of what's there, where most of us are already on PS Plus. A little bit more gets us like these extra games. And then if we want to be really hardcore with it, we could go into that third tier. But I feel like that is definitely going to be for the more niche sort of thing. That being said, I don't see them expending like a lot of resources into totally making that the greatest thing it can be, as bummed as disappointing as that sounds.
Yeah, the 3-tier thing does worry me a little bit. I wish it was 2 tiers, and we'll see again what the messaging is by the time we get there. Of course, this is pre-release, right? This is reported information, so things change and shift, and maybe it doesn't end up this way. But I would prefer it to be a 2-tier system where it is cool. Tier 1 is what we get with PS Plus right now, right? The PS Plus games, online, the core features of the cards that we use, cloud saves, all that good stuff. I'm down for that to be Tier 1, and then Tier 2 would be, here's a vast library of games now, right? I think that would be a strong thing to present. Tiering it up into 3 different tiers, and the highest tier being access to classic games, PS1, PS2, PS3, and PSP, worries me a little bit because that reminds me a little bit of what we're seeing with Nintendo Switch Online in terms of the expansion pack and how, like, okay, cool, you are speaking to the hearts of the hardcore. Are you doing that in a way that is actually going to do that justice, right? Is this going to feel like it is done with the utmost quality? I think if they're able to pull that off, then maybe there's something there. But I think there's also the thing of, we've seen higher ups of PlayStation talk about how, how many people play backwards compatible games, how many people play old games, right? Like, that has been a thing that they've talked about, and the thing that I think that runs through their minds in terms when it comes to how they value backwards compatibility and doing justice to their classic games, and them limiting that to the highest tier makes me wonder if that is them going, well, if they really want classic games, they're gonna make them pay for it. And I wonder how much they try to like really sell that as a, hey, you don't need this, right? This isn't core to us. We want you to focus on the first 2 tiers, and then the third tier is for us just to appease people. I hope that's not the case. I hope they do it justice. With that said, I think the way they do it justice in one way is by making them downloadable. I think this is the shot. This is the chance. If we're going to get downloadable games from PS1, PS2, and PS3, this has to be the moment, because if these are streaming only, I think that is a bummer. Just based off the performance of PS Now, like, it's fine, right? It works fine, but that's never the ideal way you want to play these types of games. You want to be able to download them. You want to be able to have them on your console. You want to be able to not worry about latency and all these different things. And with them reportedly adding the classic PS1 games and PSP games, like, that strikes me as a big step. That is them going above and beyond, and I hope part of them going above and beyond is doing the downloading thing, because I think it's necessary at this point.
Yeah, like, I think the fact that, like you just mentioned, them having it sort of have that additional inclusion does speak to the fact that this will be a little bit more than a drag and drop of PS Now, but I'm wondering, like, how much more will it be, and will that feel like significant enough? I think especially in terms of like what that second tier includes. One thing I want to like ask you that Keegan Hill brought up in the live chat is, do you think that they're adding the PS Plus collection that we currently have, like those free games with the PS5? Do you think that's going to get rolled into that second tier so that PS4 users can also have them? Like, do you think it's just going to float in space and be this weird sort of artifact of the launch of the PS5? Like, is that just going to kind of float in the wind there? Are they going to roll that in so that you have those, but also the other ones for free?
The PS Plus collection, I assume, is probably going to exist as is, where it is. If you have the PS5 and you have PS Plus as it exists currently, then you'll have the PS Plus collection. I think they had to make that tier 1, because I don't expect the pricing of the tier 1 to be different than the pricing of what PS Plus currently is. I expect this to be the base tier, and then for other tiers to only be slightly more expensive. And with that, I don't think you want to change up benefits for people who are already paying and already have this expectation of what this thing is, and have the risk of them being super disappointed because, hey, I had the PS Plus collection, or I thought I was going to have access to the PS Plus collection when I transitioned into my next console, and now I don't. I don't think that much changes, but I do think in terms of talking about PS4 and how that's going to work with the collection, I think that will become a tier 2 thing. Because as a reminder, right, when you look back at the article, the second tier offers a large catalog of PlayStation 4 and eventually PS5 games. I think if you're on a PS4 and you have tier 2, you probably then get access to the collection and probably more, right? Whatever they add into that service of PS4 games, probably what exists on PS Now right now, right? That probably all gets lumped in as well. That would be my assumption. But talking about the performance of backwards compatible stuff, right? Because I think that's a good conversation. Nick Believe It, who wrote it at patreon.com, has this to say. This is less of a question and more of a large opinion piece here. And so strap in, everybody. Nick Believe It writes, I present to the court Sony's recent history with backwards compatibility. Exhibit A. The PS4 versions of the Jak and Daxter games are considered inferior to the PS3/Vita versions, which PS5 boost doesn't fix. And I don't think it's a coincidence those were some of the last PS2 on PS4 games. Exhibit B. Nearly half of the games on the PlayStation Classic were the 50 hertz versions, and I've heard those aren't the only issues with some of the games. And then Exhibit C. Of the 940 out of 5,000 PS4 games tested by the website backwards-compatible.com, more than 30 are reported to have issues on PS5, including some Sony games like Ape Escape 2 and Entwined. Conclusion: if y'all are just streaming Mega Man Legends from the same server farm of PS3s you stream Infamous 2 from already, that's somehow one of the less bad possibilities. Which I think is an interesting take from Nick Believe It. The idea that PlayStation just doesn't have a good track record when it comes to the backwards compatible stuff, and so game streaming might be the more beneficial solution to it. I don't agree wholeheartedly because I think the best solution would be, hey, fix it and like make it good. But I do respect the viewpoint. I think that's an interesting viewpoint.
I too am entitled to financial compensation from having played Ape Escape 2, which I'm trying to remember if I actually did. I think I did download that one because I believe that's one of the downloadable games. And even downloading it, yeah, it still wasn't. I'm like, is this? Well, the textures were like ripping and stuff. Like there were games that weren't really super playable. I do think with the I feel like Exhibit B, that's a little bit apples and oranges because it's like a individualized piece of hardware. They still did botch it. Like I'm not saying that makes it acceptable, but yeah, like that's a little bit, left field in terms of like thinking of a streaming service or a subscription service rather. Exhibit A is interesting because while that is true and it's super salty, like the Jak and Daxter games not being the PS3 like HD remastered collection, that doesn't end up really hurting those games very much because they still look really good. Like just generally that art style in those games age very well, to the point where a lot of people, especially if you're playing for the first time, don't really notice. Like I've seen people stream that game and say, oh yeah, like it looks pretty good because it's the HD version. And I'm like, that's not the HD version. And I also think the gap between like visual fidelity with those kind of collections wasn't as big of a gap as what we see now when like an HD or a remaster or a remake kind of comes out. Again, that's not to say that it shouldn't exist, because I also feel like it's a bummer that the best version of those games is not conveniently playable on any form of modern hardware, but I will say it's like a little bit less detrimental. Yeah, I think backwards compatibility with Sony has definitely been a bit of a mixed bag.
Yeah. And like, I don't know, I'm just so fascinated by this. The fact that backwards compatibility would be the highest tier of this, and that seems like that it makes me wonder and worry so much about how they're going to handle it, because like there's a perfect world where they knock this out of the park and all of us are ecstatic and happy about it. And like, I'm hoping to dare God that is the case, because this is an opportunity. I think them relaunching this service and making it a big thing and making this their push toward, hey, we got our own service too. This is the opportunity, because for them, they are placing it as a, hey, this is our own kind of Game Pass situation. And with Game Pass, one of the best things about Game Pass is not only do those games run well, in a lot of cases they run better because of FPS boost or because of upresing or because of X, Y, and Z thing that Xbox does with their hardware to make those games play better. I really hope that like that can be the case on PlayStation. But given history, I understand why people like Nick Believe It writes in and worries, because it's like, hey, here are all these examples of them not knocking it out the park when it comes to this. Here's examples of them not even like proving that they don't necessarily care, right? Or having quotes where they talk about how like people don't play these, right? Like, why would people want these? It's so hard to believe, and I want to believe so badly. And so I'm in a place of right now hoping, but also being ready, ready for getting that disappointment.
I think too, like, there definitely have been like those very notorious comments from like higher ups at PlayStation being like, oh, who cares? And then people being like, we're going to quote this for like the next 10 years. And, I get that, because I think a lot of people want those options of back catalog and being able to like easily play like retro games. That being said, it is statistically true that most people, even on Game Pass and things, like people aren't, numbers wise, people don't really play those games. I think when you talk to a lot of people about what they're playing, if they're even playing anything, it's usually not that. But that's not to say that it shouldn't be done well still. I will say, I want
to respond to that real quick, because I also we've had this conversation I think before on this show, and I always bring up the chicken and egg argument for me, where is it that people aren't playing them because you're not doing them justice, or are people like if you made these games available and actually had them run well and actually put in the TLC to make these something that's worthwhile going back to, then would people jump into them? Because for me, I play Prey on my Xbox because of the FPS boost, right? Prey from 2017, and had a blast there. And when the Bethesda games came through, right? I played Dishonored a bit, or I'll go back and play games that run better because they're giving me a reason to go back. If people had a reason to go back to these games, would the statistics change? That would be my question to PlayStation there.
I would say probably still. Well, I feel like we have that answer with like looking over at Microsoft, and I don't want to speak too much on it because I don't have like the raw numbers in front of me, so I don't want to like miscite. But I'm pretty sure that those stats are like very similar over there, and they don't really have too many, from what I've seen, on the whole, like high level complaints about how older games run on that hardware. I think what you're mentioning with like Prey is more of an example of like modern retro, if you even can call it that, because I think it's only like 3 years old. So I think by most people's standards, just to make it easy, 10 years or older is a form of retro. So I feel like that's more like modernly old.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, I would translate that same thing to older games too as well. Like Dishonored the first Dishonored is an older game at this point. It came out in like 2012. I want to say possibly 2013.
That's pretty next year. Yeah, I would consider that a retro game. It's 10 years. It's 10 years or older. Is retro.
And I do go back to my 2012. Hell yeah, man! What a time, 2012. The world was supposed to end. Barrett, do you remember that?
I do, but then what's his face saved us in that one movie?
The Rock?
No, the movie 2012 with
who's in that movie?
Oh, yeah.
Hold on. 2012 movie.
Why did I think The Rock was in 2012?
No,
movie?
John Cusack. John Cusack saved us all.
Oh, it was John Cusack. oh man.
Should have left us there. You know what was ahead. Okay. But so since I brought up the sort of lightly negative angle of the idea of what does a 3-tiered structure mean, and what is the implication of choosing to have the modern games at 2 and the older games at 3? And, obviously we can conspiracy theory cap that forever. But one question I have for you, Blessing and Barrett, is what kind of price point are you expecting and hoping for? Like, do you think if they have it, maybe if tier 3 isn't super high, does that sort of change your opinion on the way they sort of chose to order these tiers? What's your best case scenario here?
It's a big question, right? I think best case scenario for me would be
best case free. Like it's
best case scenario for me would be for them to not do the 3-tier and just do a 2-tier, because I think that would work a lot better. But if they are doing the 3-tier, I think how much PS Plus? How much am I playing for PS Plus? $60 a year?
60 a year, yes.
I think it's easier just to do the monthly though. Like if you get scammed, if you're just like doing the month to month, because what is it, $10, right? If you're just paying every month.
Wait, you're paying month to month?
You can. I don't pay month to month.
Oh, okay. I was like, wait a second. Hold on. You're wasting a lot of money there.
I'm just gonna, I'm gonna speak for all my month to month people. It is an L. It is like the math doesn't
You're
math.
paying like twice as much.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I only have to pay $10 a month instead of paying $60 at once, and then you really have to be on it to like take advantage of it. I've just done it. I've lived that life. I'm just gonna admit it because I know there are people out here who are also like, yes, I'm paying $10 a month for like 8 services, and it would be cheaper overall, but it's like it hurts less when it's just $10 instead of like 60, even though 60 makes more sense.
Janet, we gotta take a math class.
In your life, you're telling me in your whole life you've never done that.
I mean, not for PS Plus. I mean, not for like anything that I'm committed to having. When it comes to, I mean, for like for streaming services that I'm getting for like to watch one thing and then bounce out. Yeah, I'll pay the month to month, and then I'll end up forgetting, and then now I'm paying for a year of Peacock for whatever reason. Like that happens. For PS Plus, where I'm like, I'm gonna have PS Plus. I know for the year. My strat used to be wait for Black Friday, because if you remember, PS Plus used to cost less, and then on Black Friday it would get discounted by like $10, and so I would get it on Black Friday and I'd pay like $40, maybe less than $40, and that'd work out where every Black Friday usually I could find some deal on PS Plus. That was my go-to. I know this is different from the conversation. This is different from where this conversation started, but there are ways to get around it. Don't pay $10 a year or $10 a month for PS Plus.
Yes, I know you're not supposed to, and I know it's wrong, but like I have done it, and I've done that for other things in my life as well. Like I barely, I use Transistor for like my personal podcasts, and they had a deal where they had like $10, $20 off or something for the year. I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna buy the year, and then I did the math, and I'm like, oh, I'm paying like double if I don't do the year. But like, I don't know. It's one of those things because you have to also have the money to do that right away. And I have not always had the money
fair.
or desire to drop and then you have to also be responsible, which I have not always been, and you could argue I'm still responsible.
That's also fair.
Well, you have to you have to have that written in your calendar. I mean, how many times have you been secretly hit with something you didn't know, and you're like, oh my god, I didn't know Netflix was this month. It's how do you not know? It's every 15th or whatever. It's look, you got to have it together. Some people listening out there, if you haven't had it together, if you still don't have it together,
I totally get it.
And for you, PS Plus is $10 a month. Okay,
I feel you. But I guess my
$10 a year if I could pay it per month. But the reason they do it, there's a reason they have that model. It's because people will pay the monthly even though they pay double because they can't afford or affording to pay the whole thing up front.
For sure. I mean, you want to give people options. But I guess my question is, when you're paying month to month for PS Plus, were you doing that knowing that you're going for the whole year? Or is it oh, I like these PS Plus games this month, I'm going to play these games for this month?
You're going to get mad, but I did do that knowing I was going for the whole year. I just lived the life. Because also I could drop off at any time. You know what I mean? I want my freedom. Also, sometimes I just didn't pay. That's why sometimes I just don't have PS Plus. Just generally, because I'm that's the other thing. I'm I don't always need it. I don't personally, now I have it all the time because I like the free games you get, but I don't actually play online almost ever. So I'm unless I'm actually playing these, I don't need this. So that's been my random history with gaming subscription services. But yeah, to me, it is, I talk about it the $10 a month. It can be $60 a year, but I feel that is sort of the baseline because that's what a lot of people.
We're gonna have a therapy episode of the show.
I mean, you're going to tell me that a lot of people are not doing the month-to-month on PS Plus.
I'm sure a lot of people are.
I feel like the show every week is kind of therapy for all three of us in a weird way, you know?
Someone gets exposed every episode, and I'm tired of it being me.
This is blowing. Usually, here's the thing.
I'm going to speak on it for everyone out there who's broke and or bad with money because it's been me.
Okay, bad money. That makes sense. But here's the thing. Usually, I'm the one getting exposed on these shows, and I'm used to it, right? I love playing that role. It's my favorite role to play. Expose me all day. This is flabbergasting to me that you knew you were gonna get PS Plus for the whole year, and you still paid monthly, paying twice as much a year.
Yes, but you don't feel it because
you could have got an Xbox, the Xbox subscription too.
But I'm not going to, because then I have to just pay. Then now I just have all these subscriptions that I'm not necessary, or I might have done that too. I probably have done that at one point. I think at one point I was paying $10 to PlayStation, $10 to Xbox. I swear to God, that has happened.
To answer your question,
a real life thing.
To answer your original question, I think ideally it would be $60 for the year for PS Plus Tier 1, 70, and then 80 for the highest tier. $10 stepping up.
I see PlayStation easily doing 100 for that highest tier.
Yeah, and I think that would be.
And I think that'll be. I think that'll be it, and I'll still pay for it. Only if the services that they are promising here are up to snuff. If they've got the sauce to actually pull something like this off. If it's still the same performance of a PlayStation Now, right, where I've got to stream most of my games, maybe not. But if they have figured out the technology around the cell processing for all these PS3 games, and they figured it out for these PS1, PS2, and PSP games. I mean, we can already download a bunch of PS2 games on PS4 based hardware, including the PS5. So I'm not too worried about that. But if they add more PS2 games to that library, right? I think it's still yet to be seen of what is going to be this full service here. But yeah,
I guess that is the thing, right? It depends on what it actually is, and that's what I'm there too. $100 a year does feel like a lot, but I think if the offering is off the chain, then maybe the $100 works and makes sense. But it's also, for me, it's tough to justify that. I think for what the tiers are, how they're presented, $100 for you get classic older games for $100 a year. I think that becomes a bigger ask.
Also, I think I do, Tom Blackburn in the chat says hey, Jen, I have an idea for min-max better quest to content on min-max. Rebalance your subscriptions. I do have them mostly under control, but I will admit, I'm not going to front y'all. If you had to say okay, you either make $100 or $100, if you get this right, what is my PS Plus currently set up at? I could not tell you. I know it's not monthly. It might be a 3-month where it's I don't want to do the year, or 6 months. I don't think it's a year, to be honest. I think I'm on some other secret options.
There's 1 month, 3 months, and 12 months.
I think I'm on that 3 months, to be honest.
God damn.
That I feel every 3 months I'm taking that L and just.
You're breaking me.
Because the other thing too, I think in my head, I'm like at one point I'll like get in touch with someone where I can just like expense this or like get it. Like I've had it for free too from work and stuff. And I'm like, I don't know. And obviously you can just add that on. So I know it's not
Wait,
justification.
you get PS Plus for free?
I've gotten PS Plus for free before. Yeah.
Man, must be nice.
Yeah. Like at
You did
IGN.
that, Greg Miller?
One time we got like they had a couple like ones are like who doesn't have it, and I'm like, oh, my broke ass / irresponsible ass doesn't have PS Plus. Like I'll take that PS Plus. And then I was like, oh, I like PS Plus. But yeah, I'm a mess with that stuff. But I think everybody has. I'm speaking for the people that are messes out there where it's like so many people in my life have. That's just how I grew up. Okay, I grew up on the monthly subscription. I didn't do technically you say
Jana, I grew up the same way. I was in Best Buy Gamers Club Ultimate.
Grown up yet, okay? All right, you want me to? Is that what I gotta say out here on this show? Like, there are folks listening that still don't have their shit together. Like, I'm here for you. Like, we got our Starbucks in one hand and our monthly PS Plus in the other, and we're living life, okay? We could die any day now, and that's not going to recur on my deathbed because it's month to month, and eventually, I guess it would recur even faster. I don't know. It's fine. We'll figure it out.
Dave Norridge writes in, speaking of value, and says, PlayStation has made several exclusivity agreements in recent years, such as with Haven Studios. Could PlayStation look to debut these titles on a revamped subscription service day one in order to provide value? This way, PlayStation can keep their first-party games as normal releases while still providing exclusive games day one on their subscription service to battle Game Pass. I like this idea a lot from Dave Norridge. It kind of goes back to a little bit of what I was talking about earlier in terms of PlayStation taking the steps toward what this Project Spartacus situation is. You look at PS Plus this last year, and PS Plus has had a lot of games that have been day and date, right? Destruction All Stars, Oddworld, Soulstorm, Maquette, right? Like plenty of games that were either at PlayStation State of Plays or in some cases were at that original PlayStation 5 reveal, end up as PS Plus titles. I really like the idea of having these like different, I guess, tiered PlayStation Studios games where Horizon Forbidden West, God of War Ragnarok, the next Gran Turismo, these games aren't necessarily going to be on the tiered service of Project Spartacus, but something like Haven Studios' next game, Deviation Studios' next game, those partnered games that we're getting in specifically to buff up this service, I think there's something there. I think that could be really cool, and I really like that idea.
Yeah, I think that'd be a fun one, or even like sort of, I think even if you look at PS Plus, there have been instances where there is either day and date stuff or really close to. Obviously, those are typically from smaller teams that maybe they've had their game in beta or alpha on Steam for a while. Like I think normally see kind of a certain type of game for that, but I think I'd like at least some day and date stuff to any degree would be exciting, just because then you'd have that sort of, again, don't upset people with my money stuff, but instant savings where it's like, okay, well, maybe you were going to buy this or maybe you weren't, and now you can try it out and kind of be part of like a core conversation. It'd be really fun if like more of a culture could build around this. I think is also part of the benefit of what Microsoft has going on their end. Again, I think at the end of the day, until further notice, PlayStation's bread and butter is dope exclusives, like Game of the Year contender exclusives, blockbuster hits. That's kind of, I think, at the root of what folks show up for. And there's obviously a lot of other things that, color the identity of PlayStation. But I think that's the key differentiator when you're talking to people about like what console to get or what the two sort of offer. I think that'll continue to be the conversation, but certainly building more frequent and smaller stuff, kind of similar to like a few weeks ago, we had that conversation on what is our ideal cadence for like state of play and like how do we want those to kind of be branded. I think this could kind of help service a larger conversation around PlayStation games that normally don't get discussed as much or at as high a level as those like heavy blockbuster hits.
And I think a big part of it is just pure value, right? What if you could have a game a month come through to Project Spartacus, or a game every 2 months?
Definitely
right?
A good cadence, I think, is going to be key, because that's something, if we're looking at competitors, like that's my number one criticism of like Nintendo Switch Online, is it decided that at one point, like I think that's a really sloppy cadence. I don't think they'll have anything that sloppy given how consistent PS Plus and even PS Now to a degree has been, but some type of clear messaging as they can provide without, I guess, giving everything away.
Ryan Paola Higgins writes in and says, "Hey, Bless and Janet. Bloomberg last week reported a new subscription service coming to PlayStation. The report suggests that the service will have different tiers, with the top tier giving you access to PS1, PS2, PS3, and PSP games. Obviously, this is a rumor at this time, but if true, has the Vita been done dirty? Take care, everyone. Ryan." Ryan, I would say to your question, not yet. Not yet. I think in a report like this, like again, like this is way pre-release, right? It looks like this is aimed for spring, and even then, it's not confirmed that it is firmly going to be spring, right? That is contingent on a lot of things that might get moved around and might get pushed back and all these things. I think just because PS Vita isn't included in this list doesn't mean that it for sure isn't going to be here, right? That is a thing that maybe could get solved between when this information got to Jason Schreier and when the thing is finally launched, right? Or maybe somebody missed information somewhere. I think the leaving out PS Vita games would be a bummer and would be a miss, but at the same time, it could happen, right? It wouldn't be the craziest thing to hear that PS Vita games got left out of a service like this.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, there's also like no mention of VR specifically, which I imagine will be there in some capacity. Like I would hope, like I imagine a lot of that conversation is going to be saved for when we know more about PSVR 2 and when that kind of has its showcase and its moment. And, I'm sure we'll see that integrated with like base PS Plus or something like that. Again, this is talking about that additional tier where it's more of like a back catalog. So, but even that, like it doesn't have PSVR 1 listed in there. I think though, as much as I like the Vita and VR and all these other things that maybe got left out, I think this might be for two reasons. One, they might already have in mind or lined up some games that they're going to like have baseline there, and maybe they don't have any Vita exclusives listed there. And then two, I mean, one of the reasons that the Vita's been dragged since existence is because it didn't really have like a lot of great specific for it titles that were like what are you really missing out on that? And that's not to like shade the Vita, but I think even in like when y'all did the best Vita games, like a lot of those were games playable on PSP, which was in part because there wasn't, if we're thinking of like the best things you can play on that device, they weren't all things specifically exclusive to that device. I'll also say like there are some Vita games that are really cool, but maybe got versions on other platforms as well. Like there's what is it called? Tearaway, like Unfolded or whatever. It's like the console version of that game. But when I was playing that game on console, like via PS Now, I just was like, I'm going to stop here because I can just tell this would be better on hand because it utilizes the back touchpad and things like that. So I also think part of the reason for its omission might be there's like several reasons, and I think like those are some of them.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think it's like forgotten or disrespect, but it's like, what are we really missing out here? / do we have that even lined up? Like, is there, I think
is it worth doing? I think you nail it in terms of the two things. Vita, when it comes to the exclusive library, isn't vast. Right, the PS1, PS2, PS3, PSP even has more vast libraries of exclusive content. Whereas for the Vita, when I think of the games that I played on Vita, it was exclusive games like Persona 4 Golden or Severed or others, right? Freedom Wars or other exclusive games that are on the platform, or it were like indie games or PSP games, right? Or games that were cross-buy between PS3 and Vita or PS4 and Vita. That made up a large percentage of the platform. But then also, I think number two, it is translating a lot of the games that were exclusive to Vita. Are they playable without some sort of effort being made on another platform? Severed is a game that is entirely played through on a touchscreen. Do you want to figure out how to make that work on a PS5? Would you have to like figure out how to like translate that to the touchpad? I'm sure there are challenges there trying to make that work. And so I understand in that case why you would maybe look at the Vita, look at the games that are available, wonder, all right, do people really need this on the PS5 for the amount of work it would take for us to get it over there? And I understand how the answer would probably be no in that case.
I think too, like, is it better to do it just to say you did it or to do it well? And like doing it well might not actually end up looking that good. It kind of reminds me of how when we were looking at PS Now, what was the like really thin section? Was it PS4 or like there was like one that only had PS2 had like, a dozen or so games where, and again, I think in that case, it is worth at least doing it to kind of say you did it because it'd be such a weird omission to have like PS1 and then just jump to PS3. But I think with the Vita, taking everything that we said into account, which I imagine they had, conversations on it, I think the conclusion was that it just wasn't worth it for what it was. And like, again, do you want to just do it to say you did it and have like a weird severed with like the touchpad on the DualSense that's also would only be playable then, like, you know, it would just be kind of a mess. So that's not to say I don't think we'll ever see it or that I wouldn't want it, just to say like, look, it's everything. I think that is really nice marketing. But I imagine out the gate, there's going to be a lot of challenges. And this just seems like maybe we could just leave it for now. It's go to VR.
Yeah, beyond marketing, I think it'd be great for games preservation, but that goes back into the conversation of PlayStation not necessarily being the thing that's on the forefront of their mind, right? They're trying to create good services. They're trying to make a good thing that they can market and sell to people. And like, you know, the Vita store was about to close earlier this year, and them deciding not to close it was like a big win of itself. I couldn't imagine them even going further in terms of, all right, cool, let's move all these games into the PS5 somehow, make them all playable there. It just seems like a large thing. Now, Janet, before we end this topic, I want to bring in one more write-in from Bo Pullman, who wrote in and says, I will try the third tier of Project Spartacus on day one. I've been a PS Plus and PS Now subscriber for a long time, so combining them both into one service is appealing to me. I keep PS Plus for the monthly game offerings and PS Now as a way to platinum older games I missed from the PS3 era. At times, this has felt like the easiest way to play some of these titles that feel trapped, and I've long hoped that Sony wouldn't abandon this method of accessing these games, even if PS Now is far from perfect. The third tier Spartacus gives me hope that they are growing in their commitment to their legacy and preservation. Sony has made some lackluster attempts at preservation. They had the PS2 to PS4 port program several years back, but this only produced like 16 games. I hope Spartacus can serve as a reignition of this concept for not only the PS2 games, but all their older consoles, PS1 and PSP included. I'd also love if PS1, PS2, and PSP games could come retrofitted with trophy lists, but most importantly, the selection has to be good, and they must play well. The PS Plus name and branding has great mindshare, so if reports are true, it would be very wise to commit to that name while sunsetting the PS Now name. And I agree wholeheartedly with a lot of what Bo Pullman is writing in here. And you know, Barrett mentioned earlier about how like we already have PS2 games on the platform that are downloadable, and a big part of that were those games being part of the PS2 to PS4 program, where they did do things like add trophies. And it seems like there was some work done to those games to make them work, right? Like they aren't just direct ports. And whether or not it was enough work, that is another question that I'll just throw up in the air, and we can get to at some point later. But yeah, like I think them including PS2 and PS1 games opens the door for the PS2 library to expand, which is very exciting. PS1 games, of course, being added, period, very exciting. And them being done in a way that could be done justice is very exciting. But it's tough because, you know, I think you sit and wonder how they do that, how much commitment they want to make toward doing that. On the Xbox side of things, with the Xbox backwards compatibility library and how that has taken a generation to expand to get to where it's at. That took a lot of work for Xbox. That was a lot of reaching out to devs and publishers. That was a lot of figuring out how to make games work and how to allow them to either be boosted or at least function with the technology and hardware and all that stuff. That takes a lot of effort that PlayStation might or might not be willing to put in. I think the idea of trophies alone might speak to, hey, maybe it is going to be a more like a more condensed library, because I think that is one of the things that I could see PlayStation doing. Hey, people on our platform love trophies. Let's find a group of PS1 games that we can add into the Project Spartacus library and give them trophies as a way to as a sort of like upgraded experience. Hey, you're not only getting these PS1 games, you're getting these PS1 games with trophies. Like that would be a sell for PlayStation. That would be a thing that they would do, and I could see that being the case. But I also would think that would speak to way less games being added onto the platform. But maybe with PlayStation, that's kind of where you gotta stop the expectation, right? Maybe that's where we look. That's where we look and we go, all right, cool, that's cool enough. I'll take it.
Yeah, I think this is like an exciting but also like a low-key stressful time, because while, you know, I think a lot of us in the community have been asking for this sort of thing for a while, a combination or a revamp or what have you. But I also know that like there's going to be so much like, if they don't knock this out of the park. And for me, I think that would be hitting a reasonable price point, having an appealing library, especially with that tier 2, where that's a little bit more of a mystery tier, while tier 3 you can imagine it might be some form of drag and drop of PS Now, which also, to Tier 2's point, would include some stuff from PS Now as well. So we kind of already have a little bit of a preview of what kind of games to expect, but I think a few more like marquee titles, especially in that second tier, are going to be a big deal. But also the performance. Like I think especially, I don't remember offhand when PS Now was launched, but I think certainly the discourse now has been very rightfully scrutinous of how do these services run. That day, every outlet, every person making content is going to be out there making coverage of this, doing a deep dive, going over this with a fine-tooth comb, like especially too, like as years have gone on, like criticism has, I think, evolved in a beneficial way. Obviously there's still plenty of like whack criticism out there, but I think on the whole, like conversations are deeper, but also more scrutinous because they're deeper and better done. So I really want this to be good. Mm-hmm. I feel a little bit of fear, but I'm excited for it. And I think that this is their best shot at making this what it could be. And I think clearly this speaks to a fact, them either wanting to be better or be good. We can debate on what they felt about PS Now and its success or lack thereof, but clearly they think this is a step in a better direction. And hopefully that feels clear when we get our hands on the service.
Well, Janet, do you know what's a good deal? Patreon.com/kindafunnygames, where you can go and get the show ad free. And speaking of ads, let us tell you about our sponsors.
This episode is brought to you by HBO Max. HBO Max has kept my streaming queue stocked all year with all kinds of amazing content, including The Matrix Resurrections coming out later this month. I cannot wait for that. Of course, right now you can watch Succession Season 3, Insecure Season 5, so many great shows. Curb Your Enthusiasm Season 11. Come on. HBO Max has all your favorite titles available for streaming, and they've got something for everyone. Don't miss out on taking your entertainment game to the next level. HBO Max is the streaming home of over 13,000 hours of addictive series, blockbuster movies, and exclusive originals. You can start streaming on your favorite devices today. Sign up now at hbom.ax/kindafunnydec. hbom.ax/kindafunnydec. It's like December, kind of funny December. Kind of funny DEC at hbom.ax/kindafunnydec. Next up, shout out to Audible, because you definitely want to listen to Andy Weir's Project Hail Mary on Audible. This interstellar science-based thriller from the best-selling author of The Martian is skillfully performed by Ray Porter, who brings the already gripping tale to life with vibrant and witty narration. A lone astronaut must save the Earth from disaster in this epic tale of discovery, speculation, and survival that's part scientific mystery, part intergalactic journey, and all edge-of-your-seat entertainment. This is one you don't want to miss. This Audible Studios production of Project Hail Mary is a #1 New York Times audio bestseller, and it's continuing to top Audible's bestseller charts and getting all kinds of rave listener reviews. You can hear what listeners are calling the highest order of geekgasm metal. Get on over to audible.com/Project Hail Mary and listen now. That's audible.com/Project Hail Mary. Audible.com/Project Hail Mary. Next up, shout out to ExpressVPN. Using the internet without ExpressVPN is like going to the bathroom and not closing the door. It's nasty, it's bad, and it's not safe. Your internet service provider knows every single website you visit. ISPs can sell this information to ad companies and tech giants who then use your data to target you. But with a VPN, your ISP can't follow you around the internet. ExpressVPN creates a secure, encrypted tunnel between your device and the internet, so your online activity can't be seen by anyone. ExpressVPN is rated #1 by Business Insider and Tech Radar. It works on phones, laptops, and even routers, so everyone who shares your Wi-Fi can also be protected. I've been using this for years. Kind of Funny's been using it, and we are safe and secure, and it feels so good. Secure your online activity by visiting expressvpn.com/kindoffunny today. That's expressvpn.com/kindoffunny, and you can get an extra 3 months free. expressvpn.com/kindoffunny. And finally, shout out to Honey. We're all shopping online right now, hunting down those perfect gifts, so no one wants to spend their time hunting down the perfect promo code. That's work for Honey, the shopping tool that finds those promo codes for you and automatically applies the best ones to your cart. There's a bazillion holiday codes out there right now, and Honey can get you the savings hookup. Honey supports over 300,000 stores online, and the best part is, once you install the Honey extension in your browser, you never even need to think about it again. It just automatically applies to any time you're shopping on the internet. When you're ready to check out in online shopping, the honey button drops down. It's got this cute little dancing coin guy, and then you click apply coupons and you're saving cash. If you don't already have honey, you can be straight up missing out on free savings. It's literally free and installs in just a few seconds. And by getting it, you'll be doing yourself a solid and supporting this show. I absolutely love honey, been using it forever, and you should be using it too. Get honey for free at joinhoney.com/kinda. That's joinhoney.com/kinda.
Janet, hit me with those PlayStation updates.
First we have from Haroon Cryer from Games Radar. Horizon Forbidden West will have overhauled stealth and combat mechanics. The article reads, Horizon Forbidden West developer Guerrilla Games has published an extensive blog detailing combat and stealth reworks. Guerrilla Games took to the PlayStation blog to write about several new aspects of Horizon Forbidden West. Chiefly, the developer revealed that stealth has been entirely reworked for the upcoming sequel, and that the developers on Forbidden West have extended the skill cap from Zero Dawn to offer more skills, thus creating an extended amount of play styles. There's also a big rework of Forbidden West's enemy AI, whereas before Guerrilla developers explain enemies would handle varied terrain with an absence of grace. Sorry, the description of that is hilarious. Stumbling over obstacles in their path. This time, they'll take the quickest route right to Aloy with sublime style, bounding over obstacles in their path with ease. Actually, enemy animations are a big focus of this new blog post. It turns out the enemies of Forbidden West will have a vast number of combat animations for you to identify and overcome. And Guerrilla talks at length about attacks now coming at Aloy from all sorts of angles in particular. It seems like you'll really have to identify where you're being attacked from and how, and adapt accordingly. Finally, there's a brief dive into enemy behavior. Through identifying enemy behavior patterns, Guerrilla is able to develop combat abilities that tie directly into the personality of a machine. For example, a Claw Strider is a fearsome beast, relentlessly pursuing Aloy throughout the open world, and so it has a suitably ferocious counterattack. What's your read on this, and what do you feel like you want from AI and from like the skill system in this game?
I mean, I think all this sounds awesome. I recommend anybody go to the PlayStation blog and check out this blog post because it is deep, and they've been doing this quite a bit. It feels like every other week they're putting a whole blog post about Horizon Forbidden West and what the gameplay upgrades for it are. And I do wish, I think I keep saying this, but I do wish that they had maybe video versions of these or some sort of state of play adjacent type deal. Because like last time they were talking about some of the open world and like that's stuff that I wanted to hear about, like in a video, right? Talking about how like the different factions in the world operate and how like they give them different behavior to reflect their cultures and all these things. All that stuff is very exciting to me. This stuff here is very exciting to me. It makes me excited to play the game because it does feel, reading through it does feel like a genuine upgrade from Horizon Zero Dawn in all the nice ways. There's also a video accompanying this, Barrett. I have at the top of the article in the doc if you want to bring up the video footage. And seeing the new gameplay footage, it's only a little bit of stuff, but it's enough there to kind of gleam, oh yeah, this does look better. Like this looks more involved. The melee stuff, you know, the melee stuff, which I feel like was just it kind of felt like an afterthought in the original Horizon Zero Dawn in terms of how melee works. When you see it in action, it looks like an action game, which is really awesome and really cool. The way the game moves, the way the game runs, like I'm all about how smooth everything looks in the animation. They mentioned in the PlayStation blog too, how like, you know, in relation to how you mentioned the enemies will come at you from like different angles and all that stuff. One of the things they mentioned in the blog was how there's an enemy that will come at you from underwater, right? Like enemies can come underwater, and like the way that they'll dive out of the water to come at you, right, is like a new thing they've added. And again, all this stuff sounds cool. All of it sounds like it's leading into dynamic ways to play, like in the moment, which it's super exciting for me. And I think it's all of what they're talking about sound like the right steps for Horizon Forbidden West.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think they're definitely emphasizing a fluidity that they've sort of aimed to incorporate in this. I think a lot of the descriptors, and then certainly seeing the gameplay on screen with like these very cinematic takedowns of even like something as simple as hiding in the tall grass and then doing a stealth takedown being just so much prettier and interesting to look at. Honestly reminds me a lot of the gameplay from like Last of Us 2, which again is a game I absolutely adore. strength was very much in those animations and making you feel like a sort of grandiosity, regardless of what you're doing combat wise in the game. You've definitely spoken to Horizon, the first game, really having its strength in combat when it comes to the machines, but maybe not so much with like the human encounters. And like reading this, like the reason I couldn't help but like chuckle as they were talking about, reflecting on the first game, we sort of thought it was like, the AI was a little bit awkward. I absolutely have felt that playing the first one. And I don't, like the game less because of it, but it is very notable where it's like, okay, we have like our big machine moments, and then we have like these bandit camps where like people have no idea where I am, even though they can see me, but they can't figure out how to like get beyond this like little fence. And I spent a lot of my time doing those bandit camps just very easily. And for me, I cheese if you let me cheese, because I think that's fun for me to do. And you very much can do that a lot with the human encounters, because you can just easily fool them. Like, it doesn't take a lot to sort of throw them off. They're not very responsive. They'll kind of very easily like wander into traps. And this seems like it's going to add like a bit more of that excitement, where I think, playing this thingy of the human encounters versus the machine encounters, it very much felt like there was a drag and drop of some of the ideas, but they didn't quite translate as intriguingly as you would have hoped. Something as simple as like tracking like the bandit paths versus like the creature paths. I'm like, it doesn't, I get why I can do both, but it does not translate to humans as well or as interestingly. Like, you kind of need to do more here.
Yeah.
And you didn't, which isn't a big deal, because I think the big set piece of those games is the machines. But having, especially if you're going for like a completionist run, that be such a big component. And obviously story wise, like the people and the tribes and the groups is such a big part of that game narratively, that seeing them really like, revamp this, I think is very exciting to see.
Yeah. And I think a lot of what you're talking about are steps, right? Like, a lot of these things that were in the first game, you look at and you're like, okay, yeah, these are places where it can do better, but it's not things that ruin the game by any means, because we're talking about a new IP from Guerrilla Games, right? The studio that brought you Killzone, right? And so like Horizon's already a step up. Sorry to Killzone fans who really love Killzone Shadowfall, but like Horizon is a step up in that regard already. But then you look at the open world, you look at the beauty, you look at the combat, you look at the stuff that's already there, and you're like, holy cow, this is an achievement for a studio to be able to make this kind of jump, and for them to be able to put out this kind of game. And what they're talking about in these blog posts and what we're talking about in terms of the upgrades we're seeing in Horizon Forbidden West only speak to the steps that, hey, we've established something here. Now let's go above and beyond. And so far, I'm like sold that Horizon Forbidden West is going to be above and beyond. I can get more excited about this game if I tried at this point. And so, hell yeah, go get them, Guerrilla.
Yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on this because we're going to have a whole episode talking about Horizon, but the skill stuff's very intriguing to me too, because I feel like there are quite a few skills already. I will say I'm a good way through the tree, like doing a more completionist run, and I still have like way more of the game to go, so I'm curious as to how much, with my play style of the game, will I play maxed out, because I think it'll be a somewhat significant portion. But I'm intrigued by this because so many of those early skills are very basic foundational things. Like, a lot of my early skills in Horizon were things that I thought I could do that I then realized were blocked behind a skill. And there's some things in the game that I just straight up can't do, and there's no skill for it. You just can't do it. But it was interesting to see that. I'm curious as to how they're going to approach it in this one, where, I think the implication is that the Aloy we have in the second game has obviously had all the experience of the Aloy in the first game. So I'm curious as to what are those low level skills going to look like, and in what ways are they, scaling for it? Are we going to see like a whole new entire pathway, like from the ground up, or is this going to be more from like what we already know? So yeah, I'm really curious about it. And it seems like there's some really intentional improvements here, which I think are exciting.
Barry, can you bring back the footage? There's like, I want to point out the glider one time, because this is a thing we've been talking about ever since the previous gameplay review, like the previous gameplay state of play that they did when they showed off.
You can glide farther. Like, I don't know.
I love the glider so much. Like, whenever I see it in action, I'm like, this is what this game needed. They figured it out. Like, this is the thing that's gonna take this one to the next level. I fucking love, like, and of course it's like a Breath of the Wild thing, of course, but like, I fucking love gliders in games now, like, and especially in open worlds, and the way where in action, like, you'll be in the Aloy's in combat. Here we go. Like, there was a scene in one of these gameplay clips where like she's in combat and she uses the glider to kind of like find kind of find distance and be able to like land. I love it so much. I love it so much.
I already can guarantee that I will go at one point and be like, it's time to open the glider. The glider will not open because I pressed the wrong thing, and I will fall to my death.
Yep, 100%.
Like that is guaranteed to happen, and I'm excited for it. I also think that it'll help kind of diversify like the downward traversal, where a lot of like Horizon's downward traversal is like that really cool like animation with the rope, but like they have
Yeah,
that
it's
one
like the
animation.
Assassin's Creed thing.
You're gonna ride this till the wheels fall off. I'm like, it looks good, but like, there's not. That's it. That's the one. So yeah. All right, jumping on to the next thing, we got Nick Offerman is Bill in The Last of Us. This was tweeted out by Naughty Dog, which is a simple message. Welcome to The Last of Us. Nick Offerman, we're so stoked to see you bring Bill to our TV screens. Level of Nick Offerman hype, like I think he's a cool actor. I love Bill as a character. I think the fit, like it seems to be like a good fit in terms of like, I think the characters Nick Offerman traditionally plays. But yeah, you know, I'm excited to see this show. I mean, there's not really anything I think for me that would get me more or less hyped to see it. Like I'm curious as to how it'll turn out, and it's nice to see. I think updates just in the sense of cool, this is still happening, and we have news, and it's going to be a thing.
I wonder what happened to like I could have sworn they casted somebody else's Bill.
They did.
Because they did. Okay, I wonder what happened with that because
it was scheduling conflicts. They said it in the article that was originally written about it. Because I tweeted out of like, oh, what happened to the original casting, and it was like in the first paragraph of like what happened there. So,
gotcha. Appreciate it. Yeah, like because when Nick Offerman was first announced, like I retweeted it. I was like, oh snap, Bill is Nick Offerman. And people were like, oh no, but they cast him already. So I had the moment.
They're really changing the story up.
Yeah, like I had the moment where I was like, what? Who else would Nick Offerman play?
People were theorizing that he was going to be David.
Like here's the thing, Nick Offerman is a great actor. Nick Offerman is a great actor. I think he could pull it off. I think he could pull off anybody. Yeah. But like. He's gonna be great as Bill. Like he's gonna play a great Bill.
When people were theorizing him as David, I was like I want him to like try that and experiment with that because I do believe he could pull it off, but I think it would be a very different David, right? Than the one from
Nick
the
Offerman
game.
is more Bill than Bill is.
Yeah.
Like Nick Offerman is gonna kill that.
And I'm excited for him to like kind of do that role in a more like serious capacity. I know he was on that show like Devs, but I don't know like how wide his like acting range was in that show. Like
he was more
know
serious
him from
in that show.
Like what most people know him from, Parks and Rec and stuff like that, and he plays that role in every single one of his roles. So I'm excited to like have it be a little more something that like maybe we can see a little more range from him of just like diving deeper into what his characters can be. So that's an exciting thing for me.
Shannon, what else we got?
We've got details on Uncharted Legacy of Thieves collection. This comes from Austin Goslin over at Polygon. The article reads, Nathan Drake is heading into a new generation with the Uncharted Legacy of Thieves collection early next year. The new collection will bring Uncharted 4, A Thief's End, and Uncharted The Lost Legacy to PlayStation 5 on January 28th, 2022, and to Windows PC sometime later next year. The PS5 version of Legacy of Thieves collection will also include some impressive graphical improvements, including 3 different graphics modes: Fidelity Mode, which lets players play in native 4K resolution at 30 FPS, Performance Mode, which aims for 60 FPS with a lower resolution, and Performance Plus Mode, which targets 120 FPS at 1080 resolution. Whoa. The updated versions of the game will also include near-instant load times, Sony said, as well as support for spatial audio and haptic feedback from the PS5's DualSense controller. Uncharted Legacy of Thieves collection will cost $49.99, but players who bought the original PS4 version of either Uncharted 4 or Uncharted The Lost Legacy can upgrade to the digital versions of Legacy of Thieves for $10, which this offer does not apply if you got your copy of Uncharted 4 via PlayStation Plus. So definitely no questions there. Nice and clear, as always.
Yeah, you're going to pay us that money.
Yeah, like you're paying something, maybe somewhat, a little bit. Blessing, are you going to replay these games when this comes out? And also, what are y'all going to pick for the mode if you do end up dipping into these at all?
I mean, you know what? They call me Performance Poppy in the streets, Shannon. Of course, I'm going to go performance mode. But also, I got to go back. When does this comes out? January 28th. God damn. When does the God of War PC game come out?
I don't remember.
I think that's also January. I think that's early January.
Just PlayStation January.
January 4th. It comes out on Steam. It said January 14th. Because like
and the thing
if I had to replay one, I'm replaying God of
PC
War.
Version of Uncharted, at least the trailer that I'm looking at that just came out doesn't have a specific date.
Wait, say that again?
The PC version doesn't have a specific date.
For Uncharted, yeah.
Yeah.
But like, if I'm gonna replay, I'm like in January, right? I think I was already looking at God of War as the game that I wanted to replay. I don't have the time to replay God of War, Uncharted 4, and Uncharted Lost Legacy, so I kind of gotta pick and choose. And I think I might revisit this. Maybe I might revisit a little bit of Lost Legacy because I absolutely adore Lost Legacy and I'm looking for any reason to go back to that. But I think my January might be reserved for God of War because I've been looking. That is when I've been looking for an excuse to go back to, and I think playing it on PC on my wide monitor might be the thing that might put me over the edge. But I think this stuff sounds exciting. I think the pricing stuff is a little bit of what PlayStation has been in the transition into the next generation or the new generation. I think the $10 for an upgrade if you already have your copy is kind of like that's kind of weird, but the upgrades sound nice. This game is gonna look hot. Like it's gonna look hot on PS5 and when it eventually comes to PC, and so that's huge.
Does it matter at all if you have like physical versus like what would that
For the
do?
upgrade?
Yeah.
They have also made that clear of if you've purchased the physical version of either games, you can upgrade, but you're only going to get like a digital upgrade, I think is what was, hold on, I'll look it up on Twitter because there
Like
were
mail-
answers to that. There were answers to that.
Yeah.
Yes. Which I know that's like a very like niche group of people, but I have Lost Legacy on physically, so that's what because I don't think I plan on playing Lost Legacy at this point just to knock it out. I've come this far, then I'm gonna watch the movie, and then maybe they'll stop just making this, and then I can be done. You know,
If you can
I'll be on the
transfer
other
your
side.
saves from your PS4 version of Uncharted 4 to this, will you continue Uncharted 4?
But yeah, I already have. My goal. I know people are gonna think this isn't gonna happen, but you gotta believe with me for a second. Dream with me for a second. My goal is to finish Uncharted 4 before next year. That would be my goal. That would be
Wow.
my dream.
Wow.
Because that's the one thing really, like, not that he's like literally stopping me because we're both really busy, but we have to both find time. I think again, I feel like we're putting too much on this holiday break, but I'm going to dream and pretend like this holiday break is 3 years and not 2 weeks. And, we're already partway through it. Like we've played like a decent chunk of it. Like I think 1 to 3 sessions away from like meaty sessions, from like knocking it. I feel like that could happen. But
Did you
we'll
already
see.
say what chapter you're on?
Oh, I had a big thread on Twitter about it for where I am. I know God, I feel like if I describe it, it's going to sound like everything in the game. So I don't know if it'll be specific enough. But I'm in like
exploring a tomb.
yeah, I'm in for real like I'm in a cave like stuff. Like I did the thing where you're swinging across the mountains. Like you're kind of.
Is it a more snowy area?
I think it was snowy. Yeah,
Okay.
I feel like it was snowy. I'm like low key hunting for, maybe it might be a post show thing, but I'll hunt for the thread. I made a big thread on the game where I was like screenshotting and talking about where I was. So there is documentation out there for exactly where I am. I just don't have it.
And then here it is. This is the players that have purchased any of these PS4 titles: Uncharted 4 Thieves End physical or digital, Uncharted The Lost Legacy physical or digital, or Uncharted 4 Thieves End and Uncharted The Lost Legacy digital bundle, which of course is only a digital thing. If you have any of those, you get the $10 upgrade to receive the PS5.
Here's the thing I like about this. If you have Uncharted 4, like just Uncharted 4, you can upgrade to the Legacy Edition for $10 on PS5. That's actually pretty cool. That's actually pretty nice. That's a good deal.
Yeah, I don't think that's a bad deal.
Yeah, I think having there
have been worse deals.
there have been worse deals done by PlayStation.
But it is a little like extra, a little something.
Yeah,
Not terrible.
that's actually pretty decent.
Yeah. Anyway, speaking of deals, we have the PS Plus games, which have been revealed, and they are available today. They include Godfall Challenger Edition, Lego DC Supervillains, and Mortal Shell. Though a quick explanation on Godfall, because that was sort of a weird clump of things.
Yeah.
Godfall's PS Plus version is all endgame content, no story campaign. This comes from Robert Ramsey over at Push Square, who writes, Godfall is one of December's PlayStation Plus games, except it technically isn't. The Godfall that you get to download with your PlayStation Plus subscription on December 7th is a new version called Godfall Challenger Edition, which is designed to get you straight into the title's endgame content. Quote, Godfall Challenger Edition allows new players to experience the game's trio of end modes, minus the story content of the base game, and Fire and Darkness expansions, and grants existing players new exciting features and rewards to enjoy, writes developer Counterplay Games on the PlayStation blog. So if you're totally new to Godfall, you're going to be skipping the main story content of the base game, along with all the character building grind. It's a bit of a weird deal, but we suppose it makes more sense when you just want to throw players into the good stuff, quote unquote. You'll be able to upgrade from the Challenger Edition to the Deluxe Edition of Godfall, but no pricing has been detailed. And then we have a question pulled in from Drew Venair, who says, "Hi, Bless and Janet. I'm writing in to make sense of super recent Sony news around games offered as part of the subscription service. As of today, PS Plus will have Godfall, except it's a weird version of Godfall that doesn't include the single-player story, question mark, question mark, question mark. PS Plus will also offer Mortal Shell, except it's the PS4 version, not the PS5 version, and they won't let you upgrade to the PS5 version for free. PS Now has GTA 3, except for right now, it's streaming only. Why? For 2 months? What? Hopefully, that gets fixed. And lastly, cherry on top, the Legacy of Thieves collection is a paid upgrade. Check this. If you have Uncharted," and then it kind of just explains the whole pricing model. And Sony delisted the original versions from their online store. I'm new to the PlayStation ecosystem. Welcome in. And really like my PS5, but I feel like they constantly just make such boneheaded moves. It sucks. Thank you both for what you do. So sort of what's your read on the madness, depending on how dramatic you want to be, of some of the decisions made lately in this ecosystem?
I'm booting up my PS5 right now because it is hard for me to believe that GTA 3 is streaming only on PS Now. And not
Right?
download.
I missed that. But because
Yeah.
I'm going to play it through PS Now.
And something that I forget if you read this, Janet, but I didn't realize that the separate versions of Uncharted 4 and Lost Legacy PS4 versions are no longer on the store. You can
I found that odd too.
You can only get the bundle for the PS4 version, which when you do the math, that's $39.99, and then the $10 upgrade is $49.99. So it's just the same price of the Legacy of Thieves collection.
So I'm probably the wrong person to check this, because when I go to the PS Now menu and go to GTA 3, it does say download, but I think that's because I've already bought the game, so it's automatically giving me the download button. And so I can't confirm that, but if that's true, that is fucking wild. If the Uncharted delisting thing is true, that's a little bit wild as well. I think these are ranging levels of issues, some being more egregious than others. The Godfall thing is weird. That is really weird, and so weird to the point where I think somebody wrote into "You're Wrong" on a KFGD when we talked about PS Plus games and mentioned that, oh, hey, yeah, the Godfall version isn't the full game. I was like, there's no way it's not the full game, because PS Plus doesn't do that. That's not something that PS Plus does. And checking in, it seems like the argument for Godfall is that the end game content is the good content. That is the content that people like, and so it is them offering the Challenger Edition is them allowing you to skip to the end game content, which is the content you'd want to play anyway. It is weird optically. I don't love that they're not giving the full game along with that. Like in that case, just give the full version, right? Give us the base game along with the skip to the end game content, if that's really what you want to do. Because I think PS Plus's promise is full games, right? Like PS Plus has an expectation to it when you're signing up for these monthly games, and giving just the Challenger Edition, I feel like it's just a weird workaround for, all right, I get what you're doing here, but I don't think it's not rubbing people the right way. Even me, as somebody who's like played through Godfall, I am like, yeah, just give people Godfall. Like, yeah, it's not great, but let people play it.
Why it was made in this way? Because again, I think this kind of stuff is bad when it just becomes confusing, or when it leaves rooms for questions, because leaving room for question also leaves room for errors in terms of like users and players and things, where even us are like, wait, let's double check this thing. Okay. And then how many people are going to want to do that work, and how many people are just going to be like, oh, forget it, whatever, this is badly made. Even if it's not badly done, it's just like a weird decision, right? But I think from perception, it doesn't really matter what the intention was. It's what you end up feeling as a player and a user. The Godfall thing is odd in the sense that if they wanted that, I think they could have done that, but also giving you the deluxe edition, like making it, if it was really two separate SKUs, having like one be or like having a base game edition. They kind of set themselves up for like an awkward situation.
Yeah, I don't think it's the Godfall thing. I don't think it's bad for what for the end game content being the stuff you'd want to play anyway. I don't think it's bad, but I think the problem is it feels like they're leaving room for, hey, like if you like the Challenger Edition, upgrade to the full game, and that is weird for PS Plus.
It feels like you're trying to like
Upsell.
Like what's happening here? Are you trying to sell me on a game that you yourself are kind of positioning is not that good? Like, you know what I mean? Because if they're kind of saying like this lets you get to the good stuff. Okay, if this is the good stuff, what's the other stuff? Like, you know, what's going on? It's just it's kind of odd, and it makes it feel incomplete. And again, there's been a lot of like, especially with there are different games where if there's multiple modes or like an end game or whatever, there is always an argument for what is the true game. I think even in, you know, looking at like for a Nintendo comparison randomly, but like, you know, Animal Crossing, the real game is to me like the end stuff too. But it'd be weird to like, oh, it's free, but then you're dropping me there. Or with like a game like a multiplayer game like Splatoon or something, there's a campaign that most people don't really like care that much about. But it'd be weird to like not have that and to have to do that. Like whenever it's not the whole thing, it's just odd because it's not the precedent that was set.
It's weird because I hear what you're saying. I think the difference with the Animal Crossing comparison is that base Animal Crossing is good, right? Like, you know, you're down to play through base Animal Crossing to get to the end game because it's part of the experience. Whereas I think they understand that base Godfall isn't good, and
But
like,
it's weird to admit that. Like, you know what I mean?
it's weird to admit that, but on the flip side, like, hey, it's kind of cool that they're like, hey, fuck it, don't play the base game, just play the end game stuff because that's the good stuff. Like, there's something there. I understand what they're doing, but I think, yeah, like, just give people the base, like the base plus Challenger, give people the deluxe edition in that case.
Yeah, and again, it's about like this stuff is not logical. Like, you know, much like my PS Plus like 3-month subscription that doesn't make any sense. I'm going to change it after this. I'm going to look into it. But like, it's not about logic and what makes the most sense. It's about feeling like you got a good deal. And I think much like, you know, my dumb 3-month subscription, it feels better even though it is worse, right? Like, and I think just feeling like you got the whole game, even if you don't end up needing or wanting to play the base game or the base game isn't as good, even if people are excited to just jump to the end, since something is inherently missing, it feels like you are shortchanging me on this thing that was supposed to be free because it's not the whole thing. So it's just kind of a weird circumstance. I don't think it'll really happen too often again, but it was a weird moment.
Yeah, to go back to Juvenator for a second too, like, and I mean, Juvenator includes the Legacy of Thieves thing, which I think quite a few people, including me, when I saw it all on Twitter, right? Like, immediately I was like, oh, it's another paid thing. All PlayStation keeps doing this, and I didn't pay any mind because I was used to that, right? Like, this is part of an ongoing story. Reading into it, I don't think it's that bad. I do wish that if you had both games, if you had Lost Legacy and Uncharted 4, then it would be a free upgrade. But like, at the same time, I'm kind of like, oh, $10 is $10. Like, it's kind of whatever to me, especially if you just have one of them. That $10 upgrade actually does become a deal when you're able to get access to Lost Legacy. Like, I don't think that being a paid upgrade is that big of a deal compared to like other cases like Control being a paid upgrade.
This isn't the most egregious version of this, but it's not. It's something you have to sell as good, right? Where it's like, well, if you do the math, like it's not too bad. Like, and even you know, people would like free upgrades for this. Again, looking at like,
people want above and beyond a lot of the time because we've seen that, right? Like, you look at smart delivery,
and
like,
it's kind of like, well, go ahead.
Oh, you look at smart delivery and you're like, this is above and beyond in a lot of ways in terms of how easy it is to upgrade shit. And like, yeah, like, this isn't them giving you something, but you know, like, it is what it is, right? It's a sell, it's a game. Like, this is one of the ones where I'm like, I see why people would be like, why don't they just do this? But also, I don't think this is a crime. I don't think it's an egregious thing. I kind of get why they're just like, yeah, give us the $10 for this upgrade.
I mean, again, I never want to make it seem like your work is not worth money or that you should not charge for your work because, you know, like, yeah, charge for your work and get your bag. But in the current climate, I think it does end up looking petty, and it does feel like we're not getting something that people over on the other side, you know, Microsoft, do get. And like, why can't you do that? Like, and it's like, oh, well, we don't. It's like, why not? And it just, so it ends up looking, I think again, like capitalist stuff or like consumer stuff, it's what you can get away with and what we're used to. You know, there was an era where we paid for like all our music. Obviously, you could still illegally stream and download stuff. So I'm not saying that like, oh, I've never bootlegged a CD or something. But generally, I would go and, you know, it wasn't weird to go.
What, Janet?
Well, I had to save some money to use it for the
in a
PS4.
video, you did that in a video game, like in a pretend world. That's
Sure.
Hey, you didn't actually download LimeWire and
Yeah, no, you did it in a video. You did it in Second Life or something, right? Yeah.
Sure. But anyway, that people were used to paying for music, and now we don't really pay for music. We have music subscriptions and we pay for that. But you don't really, other than hardcore fans who want a vinyl with extra stuff. There's just certain things your consumers' minds shift in terms of what you're willing to pay for. And I think in the case of upgrades, people are willing to pay for it, but they feel like they shouldn't. And I understand that feeling because it's a contextualized feeling most of the things are.
I think it depends. I do think it's case by case. If this was just here's the PS4, pure PS4 version that was or PS5 version that was branded as Uncharted for PS5, I could understand why people would be like, well, this feels like it is a more cross-platform thing if I'm getting all the same benefits. One, I think they're selling you on what the upgrades are in the write-up and in what it is. And it's a collection, right, of Uncharted Lost Legacy and Uncharted 4. I think it's packaged enough that it feels like a different thing than purely my same Uncharted 4 game that I had on PS4. I look at the director's cut as being a similar thing, and to an even greater extent. Well, you look at Ghost of Tsushima director's cut or Death Stranding director's cut, and it's cool, that is a director's cut. You're getting new content. With Ghost of Tsushima, you're getting DLC. With Death Stranding, you're getting more content, more items, more upgrades, all these things. It's a little apples and oranges, I get, because Uncharted you're not getting DLC with Uncharted 4 or Lost Legacy, but I think it is depending on the packaging, I either get it or I don't get it. In this case, I get it. I think it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's room for both viewpoints, and I think you do hear both viewpoints from the community. Though I also think that it's one of those things where when it is free, everyone's really excited about it, even though it's free on the other side of things. To Drivenair's point too, before we move on, mentioning being new to the PlayStation ecosystem, again, welcome. And I think with that comes your own BS that you might experience. We all have if you can't think of anything negative to say about any of the things that you consume, that's because maybe you just didn't feel thinking about it, which is also fine. You can just like stuff and enjoy it. But I think every ecosystem has its quote unquote problems or things you wish they did differently or things that you see on another side where you're I wish it was more like this, that, or the other, and kind of wind to mix and match them. So yeah, I mean, for you, this might be your pain point that you'll sort of experience this first year or two out, and we'll see how things continue, and hopefully there are things that you mentioned you're really enjoying it, having the console and everything, so I'm sure there's going to be a lot to love, but there's also maybe some places where you hope to see changes or advancements made like any other platform. But yeah, so let's talk about new Insomniac's Spider-Man suits incoming. This is also a quick tweet update coming from Marvel Games. It says 2 new suits inspired by Spider-Man No Way Home, exclusively in movie theaters December 17th, are coming to Marvel's Spider-Man Remastered, only available on PlayStation 5 as part of Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales Ultimate Edition on December 10th. And they have a link out for more details.
I love that they do this. I love that they're still updating with new Spider suits. I hope this never ends. And I hope they do this up until Spider-Man 2, right? I hope when we get Spider-Verse or Across the Spider-Verse next year, this time, we get Across the Spider-Verse outfits and Spider-Man Remastered and Spider-Man Miles Morales, because it's always a cool thing. And it's just dope because if you're a Spider-Man fan, it provides a level of synergy that is very specific. The idea that you have all these different Spider-Man things happening all around, from movies to comics to all this shit. And if you're playing the game, you just get benefits because Spider-Verse is coming out or because this other thing is happening. It's one of the cool aspects of business and how all this shit works, and them trying to get people back in the thing.
Yeah, it's definitely Spider season. So if you're a Spider-Man fan, there's a lot to be excited about and a couple of different
Spider season.
Yeah, it's always Spider season. Spider season indefinitely.
Oh, yeah.
And lastly, let's talk about the first ever third-party PS5 controller being announced. This comes from Kevin Lee over at IGN. It reads, "At long last, the first third-party PS5 controller has been announced. Scuf has introduced its new Reflex, Reflex Pro, and Reflex FPS controllers designed specifically for the PS5. On the surface, the Scuf Reflex looks nearly identical to the traditional DualSense, but there are plenty of small improvements to be found. The biggest thing the Reflex line adds is a removable set of back control control paddles. These paddles work similarly to the ones on the Xbox Elite Series 2, but you can reprogram or disable them on the fly via a small rubber button on the back of the controller. The Reflex and Reflex Pro still feature Sony's adaptive triggers, but the Reflex FPS swaps them out for instant triggers that actuate with one tap, similar to a mouse button. You also get swappable thumbsticks on the Reflex, allowing you to change them out for long, short, domed, and concave options. The faceplate trim around the thumbsticks is also removable in case you want to swap colors. Speaking of colors, the Reflex line will be available in white, gray, black, orange, navy, and red. However, only the black version will be available at launch, with more colorways to be released in the next few weeks and months. The Scuf Reflex line is available now with the baseline controller costing $199 USD. The Scuf Reflex Pro and Reflex FPS retail for $229 and $259 respectively. Blessing, Barrett, you gonna hit up these controllers?
These are hot. I really like these. I'm usually not a third party controller person. And like when I first saw the headline of the Scuf controllers being announced, I was like, all right, let's see what these are about. And actually looking at them, I'm like, oh fuck, I might get one of these. They are costly because they are like, pro ass controllers. But I'm kind of hyped for these. I might have to pull the trigger. What about you? Is this something that you're interested in?
Honestly, I don't think so. I think it's a little too hardcore for my needs gaming wise. Like I feel totally comfortable with, I do think it's nice to have this as an option because it's always good to have different options. And some players definitely like having the back triggers specifically or the back buttons is something that a lot of people have talked about. So I think having those paddles is definitely appealing for some people. It's just not something I've ever like missed in my gaming or wanted. I think I definitely am keeping an eye out for different colorway options, and that's probably the most appealing part of this to me, but I'm probably not going to drop upwards of $200+ just to like have a slightly different gradient to things. And I already have 2 standard DualSense controllers. They're working good for me. I'm going to keep that rocking for a bit, but keeping in mind when I do want to add in other options.
Well, Janet, it's time for PlayStation Picks. This is where we highlight a few of the cool looking games coming to PSN this week. We have one big hitter, and that is Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker. That's coming to PS5 and PS4 December 7th. And actually, this is one that I've been thinking about a little bit. I've been considering booting up Final Fantasy XIV. I can't say that too loudly.
You haven't. Stop it.
Oh, I have.
No, you're just getting the FOMO that Blessing at AOE Jr. always gets when he sees multiple
I've been thinking about this for months.
Tweeting about a game because they're so excited for Endwalker. You're going to boot
that
up, and you're going to get Endwalker, and you're going to play 10 minutes, and then you're just going to be like, all right, cool.
I mean, yeah, but also, like, I don't think you understand. I live with Michael Hyam, and at every turn, it's not that, like, I saw somebody on Twitter be like, Endwalker, and I went, oh, fuck. No, I've lived with the man who is Final Fantasy XIV, and I, like, oh my God, I hit my monitor. I hear this man talk about it. I hear this man playing it. And also see all my friends playing it and all this shit. And this has been, like, a thought I've had for months. Hey, when I finally get time, when I get some free time, maybe during holiday break, maybe I play some Final Fantasy XIV and see what that's about. Now, this isn't me saying I want to get hooked on Final Fantasy.
We're both lying to ourselves. Like, what's going on here?
Well, here's the thing. I played Final Fantasy XIV before. Like, I had the same kind of thing a couple years ago when my group of friends was playing Final Fantasy XIV. I've already put in quite a few hours into Final Fantasy XIV, but I fell off pretty quickly because MMOs just historically aren't my jam. This is me saying I want to get hooked on Final Fantasy XIV. This is me saying I just want to try it out. I want to hang out again.
You don't casually do Final Fantasy XIV though. I don't know I personally don't know someone who's like casually there. You like live the life. It's like in the bio, it's in the picture, it's in your header. You're like I don't know a casual it's like casually running a marathon. Like who's doing that?
No, that's fair. That's very fair. And I think maybe I am saying I just want to dip my toe in just to see if it gets the hooks in me. I don't think I'll have the time for Final Fantasy XIV, and I don't know if I'll have the level of commitment you need for a game like that. But, I just want to put the toe in the river, see if the water's warm. And if a shark gets me, and I get pulled in.
People are asking, how come you won't put 50 hours into Tales of Arise, but you're looking at this 300+ hour game? The community wants
I think the difference is when I'm booting up Tales of Arise, that is with the idea that I'm going to finish Tales of Arise. When I'm booting up Final Fantasy XIV, it's with the idea of it is it being a marathon. It is it being, hey, if I play 10 hours, I play 10 hours. I did the same thing with Genshin, where I put in, I don't even know how many hours I put into Genshin. I put in probably 15 to 20 hours into Genshin.
Right?
What was that?
You're still playing Genshin too, right?
No, I stopped playing Genshin like a while ago, but and like that's not to say that I won't jump back into Genshin. Like I get the Genshin thirst every now and then, where I want to like, that sounds like a different thing, but that's when I want to go back and just check out Genshin some more.
Genshin thirst was not what you're talking about.
Yeah, like I want to do my dailies or whatever. I think the problem with me and Genshin was that I would log in to do my dailies and it just got a bit too repetitive in the dailies, and the quests weren't as exciting enough for me to actually like keep on going with Genshin. But like with Genshin, I did put in like a solid 20 hours, and I felt really great about that. And that was with the idea that I don't have to beat Genshin, I don't have to get to the end. I'm just gonna play this game because this game is more ongoing than anything, right? It is about locking back in and like doing your 30 minutes to an hour of play and then getting out. I kind of view Final Fantasy 14 as the same thing. You know, that makes it an easier sell than something like Tales of Arise, where if I'm in Tales of Arise, I have to play it to finish, right? If I'm in Shin Megami Tensei 5, I'm playing it to finish it. But I also know that these games are tens, if sometimes 100 hours long. But yeah, we'll see what I do during my Christmas break. I also want to play Horizon, play more Frozen Wilds, and so like, who knows what I end up getting into. We'll see. I also want to play Demon's Souls. I have a lot of gaming plans for this break. I'm very excited. You never know what's going to happen.
Especially if you're down to stream. I don't know if you're going to, but it's fun.
It's how I would want to do it, because that's what I did last year for Bloodborne. I streamed it and it was a fantastic time.
Also, are you, real quick, because I know we got a lot of stuff to get to still, but are you down to like have people carry you, or you just want to do it like yourself?
For Bloodborne, it was nice having like Imran there, or like people giving me light advice. I don't like people backseat gaming, especially for something like Demon's Souls.
Or I mean, like going into your game, because you can do multiplayer in that.
No, I don't want to do multiplayer for that. I'd rather just play by myself. But I'm down for people to like give me tips or whatever, or tell me about like, if I'm struggling, you know, like help me out with like, hey, this item over here might help, or like, you know, I think there's a fine line between backseat gaming and, you know, helping a brother out, and like, you know, help me out a bit, but don't like tell me every single thing. But who knows? I might have an Imran or two more there to like hang out and like enlighten me on lore and shit and the stuff that will make the world shine a bit more for me. You know, having the context. I think that's more so what I like than like the actual gameplay help. But yeah, I'd like to stream that. We'll see. Last year, well, one thing I'll say too is that January isn't really game heavy, aside from like, you know, the God of War and Uncharted and stuff we just talked about. And
games will hear you, and then they're all set the release date.
Last year, I had the same idea that like I had these games I wanted to play during break, and that ended up with me beating both Bloodborne and Sekiro, right? Like, and those are two of my favorite games now. Like, I had the time to get through both of those, and so I'm hoping that this break I might be able to achieve a similar thing.
But just remember, don't wear yourself out, because you know January last year was maybe a little lighter. Don't forget that Elden Ring's coming out in January.
Not January, it's February. Got delayed.
Oh, is it February? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pokemon game come out, even though it's not PlayStation, but
Pokemon Arceus.
Yeah.
Man,
I'm surprised that game didn't get delayed. I'm gonna be honest there, y'all. I'm just saying.
Listen, this is a PlayStation. It comes out January 28th, and
so
after playing Pokemon,
I'm gonna be playing Uncharted that day. I'm gonna be playing Uncharted.
After I'll say it quickly because I know we got to get back to PlayStation shit. But after playing Pokemon Shining Pearl, I'm like, I don't know if I'm as excited anymore for Pokemon Legends Arceus, but hopefully it's good. Hopefully it's dope, but we'll get there when we get there. But yeah, I got time in January. I got time. I got nothing else that's going on that much. But we shall see. In terms of the PlayStation picks for this week, let's start off with Heavenly Bodies. That's coming to PS5 and PS4 on Tuesday, December 7th. Wrangle the hands and arms of a 1970s space cosmonaut and push, pull, and twist your way through an increasingly precarious range of physically simulated stellar scenarios, where without gravity, nothing is still, nothing is secure, and nothing is simple. This looks like a cute, fun space puzzler.
How are you seeing this one?
Yeah, like it looks cool, right? It's like it's you floating in space and like, you know, trying to essentially like get to the end, and like I think you're trying to like attach and detach to stuff to try and push yourself forward and solve puzzles. Looks really cool.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me a bit of like Far Lone Sales, which I think that was also on PlayStation, where it's kind of like you're managing a ship that's slowly like moving forward. So it seems kind of similar. It seems like a slow-paced version of games like Lovers in Dangerous Space Time, where you're kind of constantly bouncing around different places to, you know,
physics based.
Yes, exactly. So seems cool.
We also got White Shadows, that's coming to PS5 on Tuesday, December 7th. The Wolves Are Watching. Venture through a captivating but brutal dystopia where our young adventurer, Raven Girl, will travel through this huge city's brightest highs and delve to its darkest depths on her perilous journey of discovery and finding her destiny where hope seems in short supply. I played a bit of this one earlier in the year, like not even earlier in the year, like a few weeks ago, actually. And this one seems really cool. It's very much like a Limbo or an Inside. It is a 2D puzzle platformer, stylized black and white with like a lot of dark tones in the world, but then like cool lighting effects, like the way that like it is all dark, but then you see the lights light up in white, and that's what gives everything shine. I think it's a really cool looking art style that again reminds me of something like a Limbo or an Inside. Seems really cool from what I played. It seems pretty good, and I'm actually excited to go back and check more of this one out. And so that's White Shadows. And then lastly, we got Witchwood. That's coming to PS5 and PS4 on Thursday, December 9th. Witchwood is a crafting adventure set in a land of gothic fables and fairy tales. As the old witch of the woods, explore a strange countryside, collect magic ingredients, brew sorcerous spells, and pass judgment upon a capricious cast of characters. This one also looks pretty cool. It's one that has a pretty nice, colorful, unique art style. Janet, is this one that may speak to you at all?
Oh yeah, definitely. Just because it's cute, and I think the overall premise is fun. And I think just the sort of simmy elements of walking around and like collecting stuff, like this is basically how I'm playing Horizon Zero Dawn, where it's just me walking through a forest, picking up twigs for like 4 hours. So this seems to lean a lot into that kind of stuff. So yeah, seems cool.
Hell yeah. Now it's time for building the list. This is where me and Janet compile a bunch of games that you can find on the PlayStation Store. We talk about indie gems, must-play indie games, and anything in between to add to an ever-growing list until we hit 100 recommended indie games. I bring a game, Janet brings a game, the audience brings some games, and we make our way through. Right now we're sitting at 28 games on the list, and I do have an amendment to make because last episode, or 2 episodes ago, I forget what was last episode was PS Now. So last episode, I was like, was it the character bracket? That was 2 episodes ago. Last episode, I added Katana Zero to the list, and I regret to inform you that Katana Zero is not indeed on PlayStation. This is the second time we've done this. I think Janet did it the first time. I'm doing it now, and I got to take Katana Zero.
But at least
off
Janet's
the list.
got, eventually put out on PlayStation.
Yeah, Janet's at least was announced for PlayStation. Yeah. Katana Zero is not even announced on PlayStation.
Yeah.
Now
I don't know what.
You're playing games that aren't on PlayStation. Because how did you find out about this game? You're out here playing games on other platforms?
Listen, this is before I worked at Kind of Funny, all right? I used to own a Nintendo Switch, and I used to play indie games on that thing all the time.
Yeah, life before this. It's like, we don't talk about that.
I still play my Nintendo Switch. But PlayStation, get Katana Zero on your platform, damn it. Like, why isn't Katana Zero on the platform? I digress. That's a different conversation. I am going to... I'm taking Katana Zero off, but I am adding in 2 games to the list to make up for Katana Zero. And so I'm adding Fury and Guacamelee, 2 games that I love and adore. Fury is a boss rush action game. Has bullet hell mechanics to it too. It's kind of top down, kind of not, where you're in these arena scenarios with a bunch of different bosses. The art style is a lot like Afro Samurai, if you're familiar with that art style. And it's a really cool, really vibey game. Same developers as, it's called Haven. I think it was Haven. That came out earlier in the year. And it's a really cool game, has really cool atmosphere, really cool vibes, and it's a really fun boss rush game. And then Guacamelee is one that everybody knows, right? It's a Metroidvania, like heavy on the melee combat. You play as a luchador, explore a world that is fun, fantastic, colorful, and filled with a lot of funny writing. It's one that I couldn't recommend enough if you haven't played Guacamelee, but I gotta assume that if you're listening to this, you've gotta have played Guacamelee. If you haven't, go play Guacamelee. Janet, what's your pick?
I'm gonna go with a really recent one. I'm going with Kiwi, and now I'm scared. I had to do a quick Google just to double check. I'm like, I have the fear in my heart from this list. But I'm going with Kiwi. It's available on PS4 and as well as some other platforms, and it's a cute co-op puzzle game. You work as like 2 little kiwi birds in a postal office. So you do things like needing to transcribe messages or needing to like sort letters and packages. I will say there's only like a small set of types of activities you do. Like maybe like there's like 5 main things you do, but the way they help diversify and keep the gameplay fresh is by changing up the kind of challenges you might face. So maybe there's something where, like, if you're doing the typewriter one that's on screen right now, maybe the keys randomly swap out, or there's like a part that you have to do synchronized together. So it's not quite as hard as something like Overcooked, but it's kind of in a similar cooperative DNA. It's also a bit more cooperative than that because there are things you literally have to do together, but it's really cute. It has like different seasons that you go through, so it has quite a bit of content to it. I'm having a lot of fun playing this. I think you can also play it alone as well, but I would just don't. Yeah, it has single player available as well, or split screen or online. I believe. And yeah, I'm having a good time with it. It's really fun. And there's cute little cosmetics you can unlock where you can, like, you know, change your bird's fur or whatever, or like put little hats on them. So it's just a cute, fun puzzle game that I've really been enjoying this year that came out really recently.
Hell yeah. We got one from Darth Stridius who wrote in and said, Hollow Knight, an amazing indie game and one which people should at least try. The music and atmosphere in this game is very well done. That's awesome. I really want to play Hollow Knight. It's one that I've been putting off a lot. I played the beginning of it, like when it first came out, and I didn't immediately vibe with the art style, and so I put it down. And since then, I've seen so many people talk about how it's like one of their favorite indie games, one of their favorite like Metroidvania type games, and so it's one that I want to return to and actually give it a legit fairer shot. And then Dear Sixlet wrote in and says, The Sexy Brutale. The first game I platted on my profile. This game is easily digestible in a weekend. It's a puzzle game where you have to go through a mansion, preventing the deaths of the masquerade guests by utilizing Majora's Mask style time resets to get all the info and execute on the plan, while solving a more personal mystery as well. Easily an overlooked indie game, by no means an Undertale, but absolutely worth the look. And so there you go. We're now sitting at 32 games. I'll read through the list real quick. We got Superliminal, The Witness, A Short Hike, Undertale, Moonlighter, The What Remains of Edith Finch, Disco Elysium, Final Cut, Deadlight, Broken Age, Chicory, Disc Jam, Sound Shapes, The Pathless, Abzu, Risk of Rain 2, Fez, Gone Home, Celeste, Temtem, The Vanishing of Ethan Carter, Jazz Punk Director's Cut, Oxenfree, The Last Campfire, Journey, Inside, Snake Pass, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, Fury, Guacamelee, Kiwi, Hollow Knight, and The Sexy Brutale. Janet, before we go, where can people find your work?
You can follow me across the internet. That's on Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, a bunch of other places under the handle Game Onysus. That's Game ONYSUS.
Hell yeah. And before we go, remember that we are doing that giveaway for episode 100. So tweet out your favorite PS I Love You XOXO moment of 2021, and you'll get access, or you could be picked to get access to the hottest PlayStation games of 2021 collection, featuring things like Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, Returnal, a PS Plus subscription for 3 months, just like how Janet has, and keeps rotating on for some reason. Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut for PS4 and PS5, Death Stranding Director's Cut, and MLB The Show 21. This is all provided by PlayStation, so thank you so much to PlayStation over there. And please note, these are redeemable by your residents in the US, Canada, and certain regions of Latin America. And then for PS Plus, that will have to be redeemed by March 31st, and it auto renews after 3 months. So make sure that you're aware of that. Also, before we go, remember that the hashtag PS I Love Photo Mode is still for Horizon Zero Dawn, so tweet those out with the hashtag PS I Love Photo Mode for us to pick when the time comes. Remember, this has been PS I Love You XOXO, your PlayStation podcast. Each and every week, we get together to talk about the hottest topics in PlayStation. We've got a Patreon post show for those that are subbed at the silver level of patreon.com/kindoffunnygames, so stick around for that. Otherwise, until next time, peace out.